with a special meeting. And so we will be considering both agendas on tonight's meeting. So before we jump in, I would like to remind everyone that we are still participating remotely, and there are multiple ways that folks can tune in tonight and participate and provide your input and your public comment. The best way to get your information is to go to our town website, which is www.townoffairfax.org, and you will be able to find all of the instructions as to how to participate. You can also watch the meeting on cable TV, Comcast channel 27, and AT&T channel 99. I am not going to read all of the other pieces, but I'm hoping that folks will go onto the website and find out all the information about calling in and raising your hand and how to participate. Just to let you know that if you're going to provide a live comment at the meeting, you can select the raise hand icon during the public comment time, and you'll be added to the queue and unmuted when it's your turn. If you're calling in, press *9 during the public comment time to be added to the speaker queue. You will be unmuted when it's your turn, and press *67 before dialing to hide your phone number. So with that, I'd like to call this special meeting to order and begin with a roll call. If you would do so, Madam Clerk.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Kohler.
Here.
Councilmember Reed.
Here.
Councilmember Hellman.
Here.
Vice Mayor Ackerman.
Here.
And Mayor Goddard.
I am here. Thank you very much. And as I said, we are going to be considering two agendas tonight. One is the continued special meeting agenda from the 21st, and one is a special meeting which will take place and coincide with tonight's meeting. Sorry, it's a little bit confusing. So with that, I would ask for an approval of both agendas and the affidavits of posting.
I move to approve the agenda and the affidavit.
Is there a second?
Did you want a friendly amendment for both agendas?
Sure.
Yeah, I was just going to move the special one, but whatever.
No, it's
I'm looking at it as one. So friendly amendment would be to approve both agendas and both affidavits of posting.
okay. I think I said that, but that's all good. Okay, so we have a motion, Hellman, and a second. It's either Kohler or Reed.
I'll second, yeah.
Okay. And,
along with the friendly amendment.
Okay, excellent. I'll take the roll call. So Councilmember Kohler.
Aye.
Councilmember Hellman.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Ackerman.
Aye.
And myself, I vote aye. So moving right along tonight, as it's a special meeting, we do not have open time for public comment, but of course there will be public comment after each item on the agenda tonight. So we will move straight to the consent calendar, and I would ask that Garrett give us a staff report on the status of our residential rental assistance program to assist extremely low income renters whose household incomes were adversely affected by COVID-19 and who are at risk for homelessness.
So, Madam Mayor's clarification, as consent, you normally don't have a staff report, but in this case you are asking, so in essence, you're...
Yeah, let's pull it.
So you want to pull the item from consent. So,
Okay.
you make a motion to...
Okay.
I didn't do that.
Is
Okay.
that a motion, Stephanie?
Well, I wanted to talk about it, so I'd like to pull it. Thank you.
I will second pulling it.
Okay, so what we'll do then is ask for a motion to, well, there is no other consent item, so ask for a motion to pull that item. Or did you just do that?
Just did it.
Okay, so that is a motion Hellman and a second Reed. Councilmember Kohler,
Aye.
Councilmember Hellman,
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Ackerman,
Aye.
and myself, I vote aye. So with that, let's go ahead and consider that consent item as a regular item and start with the staff report. Garrett.
Okay, sure. So you may recall at your August 19th meeting, the council approved the creation of a residential rental assistance program for residents in need, and you allocated $60,000 to the program. The purpose of the program, as you stated, was to help residents in need whose household incomes were adversely impacted by COVID-19. It's modeled after the county program. So the program limits were households earning less than 30% of median income and at risk of homelessness. At that time, we reported 2 nonprofits, St. Vincent de Paul and Ritter Center, both volunteered to administer the program on behalf of the town. They also administered a similar program for the county. To make things easier, we just split this funding between both nonprofits, so $30,000 to each, and they coordinated to make sure there's no duplication of effort. So as of October 13th, as you'll see in the staff report, we indicated there was 38 applicants. Of the 38, 8 grants were awarded, 1 grant was in process. They're looking for documentation from 4 applicants. 10 were still in the process of being contacted, which means they call, they wait for the person to call back, and they, in essence, they call 3 times. 8 were closed because there was no response, and 7 were either deemed ineligible, they no longer needed assistance, or they received assistance before under the county program. That totals out to your 38 applicants. So far, they awarded a little less than 17,000, little average of about 2,000 per grant. And so that means you have approximately 43,000 left in the program. Render Center does indicate that there are some households that received prior assistance under the county program. Those people would be interested and in our need of additional documentation. In essence, up in the table of the data I read to you, what that really means is 14 households are still in the process, either in the process of being contacted or they're waiting for documentation. I think for staff, we did ask for another update. We could have something available at your November 4th meeting. But what we're kind of saying is, let's see how the rest of this plays out on the 14 households. And then at that time, then the council could decide if they want to make any program changes. But that's pretty much the staff report.
Okay, thank you, Garrett. Do we have any questions of Garrett? Stephanie?
I do. So thank you for this report, Garrett. One question I have is in the numbers you provide. So starting at the top with the grants awarded, do we know, like, so typically what I'm accustomed to is like what you would call an approval rate. But what I don't see here is number of completed applications. So that would give you your approval rate, because you don't want to use the 38 because that's inclusive of applicants, you know, pending documentation. So I would like to understand is of everybody that completed an application, you know, what % are we approving? Do you know that number?
The best way to describe that, to answer what I think your question is, when we say 8 grants awarded, that means they actually received it. So their application was approved, documentation.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. I'm saying, but how many of the 38 provided complete documentation?
13. 8 awarded grants, 1 in process, and 4 are waiting for documentation. So that's really your 13. The contacting means they're still contacting them.
But the 4 haven't provided.
Right. That means that they actually contacted them and they've spoke to them and they're waiting for them to actually submit the documentation. That's how it works. So they're waiting for them to give them the documentation to determine if they're eligible to confirm, because normally they would talk to them on the phone. They would get the info, generally you could see if someone's generally eligible based on what they said over the phone. And then after that, it's okay, go ahead and submit the documentation so we can confirm your eligibility.
So you're saying there's no applicants that completed the process that were denied?
No, oh, you want to, yes. So that would be the 7, but the 7 don't actually submit an application per se. They either say they're either not deemed ineligible, which without the spreadsheet being open would mean that they previously received assistance. So that automatically makes them ineligible. And then some said they no longer need assistance.
Okay, so then the 7 would be in the denominator of the approval rate as well, because they provided, and there's noise in that number then, because if they completed an application, then that would be in the approval rate as well, no?
Well, if they did, if you're saying these people applied in terms of they gave their information and they either weren't interested, which means they didn't do an application, or they were deemed ineligible, which means they didn't do an application either per se, because the first question would be, have you received assistance before? But they would know that in their database, and the people would probably say, no, we have received assistance before. Or they already have them in the database, in which case they wouldn't even contact them. So it's...
Okay. What I'm trying to get a sense of is how many of the 14 are going to be granted. I mean, this is, obviously we've waited a week since last week, so this 14 is, old data, right?
Right. So it could have changed in the sense that, yes, of the 14, if the 4 applicants submitted their documentation, then presumably that confirmed they're eligible. And of the contacted, if they actually responded and talked to them, then they would move into the waiting for documentation if they haven't submitted it already.
Okay, and so when we first developed this, one of the questions I had is, what would it take to add criteria or loosen the criteria or make any changes from, we kind of plugged in the county program, right? So have we researched that? Do we know?
You mean expanding the program to a higher income level?
No, yeah. I mean, no, if we wanted to loosen the criteria.
If you wanted to loosen the criteria, I would have to have another discussion with them. My initial discussion with them, their preference was to just follow the criteria as the county because they were set up for that. To change it, you could fall into a Corte Madera situation where you'd have to administer it yourself.
But we don't know that to be true, right?
No, but
because we haven't asked the question, right?
No, not at that level. We just talked about if we could follow the county program, that was their preference. If there are some tweaks to it, that might be okay. But if you tweak it too much, then that could be something that just doesn't fall in their bailiwick or their interests of trying to do it. So in other words, if you increase, I'll make it up, you increase the income level to like 70% of medium, they may say, hey, that's not really our focus. You'll need to do that yourself. But the answer would be no, haven't had that level of discussion. I think for the recommendation, we're kind of saying, hey, let's see what happens with the 14. And when we come back to council, you can decide what you like to do, and I'll have answers by then. If I'll just ask them, would they administer it if we changed it to a higher income level?
Okay.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Yes, please.
So I'm a little confused. Okay, so we have 8 that are awarded, 1 in process, so I'm assuming that's going to go, and I'm assuming the 4 that are supposed to be submitting documentation will probably come in. So that's 13. If we say we have 43,000 left, and we I know they've been giving out less than that, but our cap was 2,500. That leaves us about a little more than 17 people that are possible. If we just assume they all went for the cap of 2,500, but we know that that's not the case. So it's probably more on the order of 20 left. When you say that there are 15 or so, am I reading this right, that we're waiting for the counties, that were on the waiting list for the county, is there some reason why those people weren't reached out to, because they may have met the qualifications?
No, this includes the 38 applicants includes anyone who was on the county waiting list.
Okay, well, all right. So I was confused by that sentence in there that talks about that there's some that are still in need. So if we assume that we have 43,000 left, and are 9 included in that? Do you assume the grant in process, the one? When you say that we spent a certain amount of money and you say there's 43,000 left, does that assume that there's 9 or 8 that have been?
8.
Okay, so if we add up, it's 15 left, and if we stay with the cap of 2,500, we're totally good, and we have a little bit of money left over. And I remember when we started this, the reason we stayed with the counties is because we wanted to get the most vulnerable people that were potentially at risk of homelessness. So before we expand the program, I guess it's worth checking with Ritter and St. Vincent's if they wanted to expand it to higher income levels. But it seems like we can cover the 15 that are potentially left for now. And we're having a meeting next week, or maybe 2 weeks after that as well. So we could potentially revisit this. By then we should know about the rest of these guys. Wouldn't you think, Garrett?
That's my hope. I did ask them for an update, because I really don't know, the contacting part's the tricky part, because my understanding is, you call, no one answers, maybe you can't leave a message, that happens. So you call again, maybe they respond, they call you back, maybe you go back and forth. And so it could just take them a long time to process. And so,
well, could we, I know it's late and it's Wednesday already. Is it possible for us to get an update for next week, or potentially if we move forward with the special meeting 2 weeks after that?
Well, I did ask them for next week. I asked.
Okay, great.
I'm just saying,
I know we don't know, because this is a difficult process of dealing with people that are vulnerable. So they're not always going to get back to everybody ASAP.
right. It's difficulty, but sure, I asked for an update. If there's something different, then most definitely we could put that on there. If there's another meeting after that, maybe that works better, but we'll see.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions from council? I had a quick question, and maybe I just got lost in the numbers, but assuming there were, do we know the number of how many Fairfax residents were on the wait list prior to our approval of our program?
Oh, I think in a previous staff report, I can't remember the number. But yes, the answer to that would be yes. I don't have that.
Okay. So the important part of that question was that I wanted to know exactly how many new applicants we have that were not already in the, at least in the pike, through the county's program.
Okay, I get that. I think in one of the earlier staff reports we had that number, but I don't remember it off the top of my head.
Yeah, I just think, we can come back, but let's hear from the public first and see what other folks have to say. So if there are any public comments, this would be the time to raise your hand icon and let us know. Michelle, are you seeing anyone?
No, Madam Mayor, I do not see any raised hands.
Okay, so let's bring it back to council. Does anyone have any follow-up questions or anything you'd like to say about this, or direction for Garrett? No. My only comment is that if we truly have not managed to recruit any brand new applicants, then I would prefer that we continue that outreach at this lower income level to find those most vulnerable before we move forward to look at any kind of a higher income potential recipient. Not to say that we shouldn't do that homework, but I would really, it would surprise me if there weren't more truly extreme low income folks in need. So I just wanted to put that out there, and we'll hope for a report on the next at the next meeting.
Just a note on that. So we distributed flyers throughout the community, right? To all of our sort of vulnerable outlets.
Mm-hmm. Good. And maybe they'll step up. We don't have a expiration date on the application period, do we? Okay, great. Okay, so are we ready to move on? Sounds like it. So let's move on to item number 2 on the agenda tonight, which is to discuss and consider the concept of holding 2 regular council meetings per month. And the item is an item to direct staff accordingly. So Garrett, could you go ahead and give us a staff report, please?
Sure. So this was continued from your October 7th and September 2nd council meetings. One thing just to point out, just out there, the recommendation is actually that we schedule, in addition to the 1 regular meeting a month, that we schedule 1 special meeting per month over the next 6 months, evaluate the results in month 7, rather than going to a 2-meeting structure. And part of that is based on what we believe the council objectives are. And so we'll touch on that more. And so previous staff reports, we tried to focus the discussion on what are the council objectives for 2 meetings a month. But in the staff reports, we also try to quantify the potential costs. And we kind of think that actually muddied the waters on the concept. And so what we're trying to do here is just focus on what we believe the council objectives were for 2 meetings a month. And so our take on what your objectives would be is 1, to get the agenda items of significant community interest earlier in the evening. Now, these agenda items typically are public hearings or regular meeting items. Sometimes they're pulled consent items, but generally these are items that have lots of public comment. And so if you have 20 people commenting, if they take the full 3 minutes, that's an hour of public comment on the item. The other objective we thought for the council was to increase the opportunity for the council to discuss more of these items of significant interest a month. So rather than 1 meeting, 2 meetings give you more opportunity to discuss these items. Another objective we thought was maybe the council would like to adjourn the meetings in the community, by 11:30. The reason we picked 11:30 is council has that policy that if any matter is not started by 11:30, it'd be continued to the next meeting unless the council votes on it. So we chose 11:30 as a goal. And then the 4th objective we thought was important is that the council provide a set schedule so the community knows when these meetings are going to occur. So like regular meetings are on the first Wednesday. If you had another regular meeting, maybe it's a 3rd Wednesday. If you had a special meeting, you get more flexibility on those dates, but then we're saying let's develop a calendar 6 months out so people can know what your meetings would be. And so we agree, if these are the council objectives, then you probably really have, we think, 2 approaches, which are 1 regular meeting, 1 special meeting, as we're recommending with a scheduled special meeting 6 months out, or you go to 2 regular meetings a month. And so what we've done in the staff report is we just try to build out how we see it working and why we think one is better than the other. So the first one I'll talk about is the 1 regular meeting a month. And so really the primary thing there is understanding the difference between a special meeting and a regular meeting. So for a special meeting, well, let me start this way. I'll go that way. Okay. So for a special meeting, one of the key things is we don't have open time for public expression. We're not required to have it. And what that means is we don't have to have open time for items not on the agenda, like we didn't do for this special meeting. We don't really do announcements, and we have very few, if any, consent calendar items. And so in essence, what that means is that you can start the meeting a little bit sooner. So what we found is typically the council at a regular meeting, after you do allow open time, announcements, the opening of the meeting, and so on, and then you do consent, you don't get to your regular agenda items until 8. It's usually after 8, but let's just say that's about 8 o'clock. If we try to have a goal to be done by 11:30, that really just gives you 3.5 hours to talk about the items of significant interest. And normally what that means is that the council usually can only get in 1, 2, maybe if things are going really well, 3 items at the most. And that's based on a regular meeting where you're allowing that. Especially mean because you don't have the open time, the announcements, and very few, if any, consent calendar items, you could start roughly at 7. So 7 to 11:30, that's 4.5 hours. And pretty much within that, we believe you can get, 3, maybe even 4 items of significant interest actually discussed. Now, with a special meeting, it's also true you could start earlier if you wanted to, and you have a little more flexibility on the date. So you could start a special meeting at like 6:30, whereby as a regular meeting, you have a set day and time. So if you said the third Wednesday, usually you keep it at 7, and it'd be that third Wednesday. What happens on your third Wednesday is right now, typically you don't have conflicts with other meetings that the council members must attend, but sometimes those meetings, like maybe it's the mosquito abatement district or fire, some meeting gets changed and all of a sudden you have a conflict with the meeting. So under what we think a regular and a special, we think that actually provides, and the goal of getting done by 11:30 every night, we think that actually makes it so that the council could actually discuss 4 to 6 items of significant interest under that structure. Significant interest means item taking a minimum of an hour to an hour and a half to talk, and some things take longer. So now let's talk about regular meetings. So again, regular meeting, we have open time for items on an agenda. We have announcements, and we have consent calendar, and you have a set day, time, and place. Generally, you don't get to items until regular items or public hearing items until after 8 p.m. That's a limited amount of time you're going to have to talk about these items, the 2 regular meetings, and most likely you're probably only going to be able to talk to about 2 to 4 of these items a month versus the 4 to 6 under a regular special. Now, there have been mentioned some hybrid approaches. Some hybrid approaches being, well, what about one regular meeting? You have presentations, consent calendar, things of less community interest. And the other regular meeting, you just have those significant items. Again, the issue is you really only have one meeting to talk about it. And again, because of open time announcements and consent calendar, you're probably, even if you have a minimal consent calendar, you're still not going to have enough time to talk about items. That's probably only going to be 2 or 3, because one regular meeting, you're not talking about anything of significant community interest. Another concept that was raised was the idea of, what if you had a regular meeting that somehow you could split into 2? A regular meeting you start off with all that stuff, and then the second day is just the items of community interest. In essence, that's like a regular and a special meeting, except the first meeting you're not talking about anything, so you're losing a day. And so that's the primary distance. The difference is the ability to talk about more items of significant interest. Now, should point out 2 regular meetings. If the goal is to allow for more public comment on items on agenda or open time for expression, 2 meetings would do that. 2 meetings gives you a little more flexibility with the adoptions of ordinances, because second readings have to occur at regular meetings. However, special meetings, you can introduce your ordinances and then have them adopted at the regular. So, there's a couple of things that are a little different. But how we thought this might help is, what we did in the staff report is we used the October 7th meeting as an example of how it would have worked if that was a special meeting. And we use the October 7th meeting because hopefully that's the most current in everybody's minds, although maybe some things weren't as typical as they normally would be. So the October 7th meeting took about 15 minutes for the opening of the meeting. Those are announcements, reading the protocols, and you thank recreation staff. Maybe that doesn't normally happen, but you're looking at 10 to 15 minutes for what we call the opening of the meeting. Then open time for public expression, or these are open time for items on the agenda. We actually had 16 speakers that totaled 45 minutes. And that clearly is long by, I mean, that's pretty long. Normally the average, when Michelle did the data from April 19 to March 20, average is more like 22 minutes. So, well, what that meant for the October 7th meeting is you actually didn't get to the consent calendar until 8:10. So a whole hour before you even got to even any items of business. If open time was shorter, it probably still about 8 o'clock until you got to regular items. But in this case, on October 7th, you didn't even get to the consent calendar until 8:10. Now, October 7th is a little different. Item from the consent calendar got pulled. That took 2 hours. Maybe that's not normal, not as normal, but it did take 2 hours. And then the rest of the consent calendar took about 25 minutes. So almost 2.5 hours for the consent calendar or items pulled from the consent calendar. You also continued to 2 items from your regular meeting to this meeting, or actually October 21st, but then this meeting. And so the remaining 3 items on your regular agenda from the 7th, that took about 2.5 hours of discussion. You had 21 total public comments. That took about 50 minutes. So another 2.5 hours of discussion. So in total, for 4 items at your October 7th meeting, you took about 5 hours, 295 minutes, so about 5 hours. And of the 5 hours, an hour 45 was just for the 40 public speakers to speak. That's hour 45. And they actually only averaged 2.5 a speaker, which is less than 3 minutes. So that's actually, you gained a little bit. But what happens is your meeting didn't end until after 1 o'clock, which is obviously not a goal, not sustainable. Well, maybe it is sustainable, but it clearly shouldn't be a goal. So what this all means is we find that for the meeting to have ended by 11:30, October 7th, you really would have only been able to discuss 2 items plus the consent calendar instead of the 4 items that you did. Under a special meeting, if you started at 7 or close to 7, you probably could have had all 4 items completed by midnight or 3 items by 11:30. Just kind of depends how you want to break that out. A regular meeting, special meeting format, would have broken out the same. You'd had 2 on the regular and 4 in the special. And so that kind of shows you how it would have worked and how a special meeting versus a regular meeting is superior if you want to have opportunity to talk about things earlier of significant interest. Now, should be noted, all meetings are different. Factors are completely different. Who knows? The meeting could have been an anomaly. There's clearly other things the council members can do, like you could shorten up the amount of public comment on items depending how many people want to speak. You can clearly do other things to shorten it up, but you can also apply that anyway to regular and special meetings. Now, the one thing we didn't talk about too much, and we try not to, is we did add a part regarding kind of what the impact is onto staff resources. So in previous staff reports, we tried to quantify the costs and the impacts to staff, and it's pretty difficult, but the best way to describe it is, as management staff, we're not paid hourly, so we don't get it. Whether we attend, it's the same cost to the town. There's no added extra cost for us to attend extra night meetings. Part-time staff, we're paid hourly. We normally just adjust their work schedule, so there's no impact. Out-of-pocket cost to actually do another meeting, that's pretty nominal. We don't think that should be a factor in one way or another, determine whether you should do another regular or special meeting a month. Similarly, just because other communities have 2 regular meetings a month, that's really not a reason either, although Ross and Belvedere and us are the only ones that have 1 regular meeting per month. And so as you break it out, again, it's really hard for us to break this out. But so the primary impact of obviously 2 meetings a month is staff time to prepare staff reports and agenda, and actually staff time to run the meetings. Now, producing the packets on Fridays, that's pretty nominal portion of the time. Actually, the town clerk and staff have that down pretty pat to get that out and posted. So there's really not some help needed there. Previous staff report, we had talked about time for staff reports and things could take away from time doing other things we should be doing, delaying or deferring those type of material, type of task. We talked about maybe additional professional help may be needed. For the most part, I still think that's true, but I also think it's probably premature to even have that discussion now. I think what we should do is, given the uncertainty of the economy, we don't know what the financial impacts ultimately will be. And we think it's better just to wait. So that's why we're saying the special meetings over a 6-month period, because then what we'll do is we'll really delve in and keep better track of the amount of time to do things, the amount of time the council is spending on items, and we'll just have better data for the council to talk about in 7 months. And some of the things to consider when we talk about these 2 meetings is there's probably gonna be a couple of tweaks, because for planning, when planning items will probably just be at the regular meeting. That's the first meeting, first Wednesday of the month. The reason for that is that if for whatever reasons the 3rd Wednesday is deemed the best day to have these meetings, whether special or regular, then the planning commission meets on the 3rd Thursday. And so it's really tough on staff to have one night meeting where it gets done at whatever, midnight, or even if you're lucky, 11:30. And then next night to have a planning commission meeting that's going to go just as long. That's unsustainable. I've done things like that before, and you just can't do that on a regular basis. That doesn't work so well. The other things are, we don't know. It could be as simple as when we have a special meeting like you did on the 21st and you continue to 28th, that was pretty nominal work just to get that done. And by the way, I should thank you for continuing that meeting. For the public, if you don't know, I had a last minute family emergency, and council was gracious enough to go ahead and continue to 28th. So I appreciate that, so I could be here. Some of the other things to think about that's kind of really hard when we do these things, it's kind of the workflow. So when you have one meeting and it's the first Wednesday, you know that prior week, your workflow is all staff reports. That's what it is. When you have another meeting, depending on what's needed, that disrupts the workflow. And what you find is there's a lot of start-stop. And so normally if something takes you a half an hour, it takes you 2 hours. That's just the nature of how things like that work. And for the council, something as you're aware is you do have a tendency to discuss an item, which is good, but then you'll continue that to another meeting and you'll request additional information. And so like for Meadowway Bridge EIR, we had to collect a bunch of information. That took a bunch more time. I think some things I got to point out, from April to September of this year, we've in essence met every 2 weeks. That clearly is not sustainable for staff. That's not anything that's sustainable at all. Typically in a year, we normally would have 4 to 6 special meetings. That includes retreats and workshop. This year, we've already had 11, so that's double. So that clearly has an impact. And then one of the last things, even at the base level, what the impact is a time to staff to attend another evening meeting. And I don't know if people know that just because we have an evening meeting doesn't mean we don't work during the day. So like for today, for example, I had it was remote though, so that makes it easier. I had a meeting at 9. So I've been working since 9. This meeting goes to 9, that's 12 hours. It goes to midnight, that's 15 hours. Prior to COVID, I'd actually be in meetings in person, which would mean I wouldn't be home for the whole time from before 9, because I have to get to the meeting, to whenever the meeting is over and when you get home. So there is just that natural impact. But that being said, as staff, we're saying, let's evaluate it, and then we can come up with solutions for how we can minimize the impact to staff if it's, just how something like that could work. So that being said, that's why we're recommending the 6-month period where you schedule one special council meeting a month. You come up with a schedule so everybody knows when it's going to happen. So there's not a question of, oh, I didn't know you were meeting, because they can look at the schedule. But it is important to note, just like regular meetings, if you have nothing to meet about, council can always cancel a special meeting, just like you could a regular meeting, although I'm not sure we've ever canceled a regular meeting. At least I don't recall us ever canceling a regular meeting. But again, we just think it's better. We can collect the data. see how well it addresses the objectives as we believe they are. So that's what we're recommending. But just so you know, if you wanted to move to 2 regular meetings, you would need to do a code amendment. And so that would take time anyway. Best case scenarios, first reading November, second reading in December, and then it would take effect in January. But normally in January, you don't meet the first week of January. And so you'll have an adjusted schedule anyway for January. So with that, hopefully, that did take a while. I do apologize. I was just trying to explain the different nuances involved with these and making sure that staff understood correctly what the council objectives were. And with those objectives, then we believe 1 regular, 1 special best meets those objectives. But with that, that's the staff report, available to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Garrett, for being so thorough. And I'm just going to ask my colleagues that let's just keep it only questions, and so that we can hear from the public, and then we can come back and work through this. So Bruce.
Just a very minor point. If we went with the recommendation of 1 regular meeting and 1 special meeting each month, we would still put the signs up that around town that say that there's a council meeting tonight for the regularly scheduled special meetings as well as the regular meetings, correct?
Yes, we put signs up. Correct.
Okay, any other questions?
I'll wait till after public comment.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, seeing none, let's please go out to the public and hear what everybody has to say. So Michelle, would you just call people in as they raise their hands, please?
Sure. Right now there's 1 raised hand, and the first, that is Richard Applebaum. And hang on. There.
Good evening, and I'm glad that this topic is being reviewed. I found some of the report a little bit confusing, so I'm going to sort of give a perspective from the public. I think there are 2 things in play. One is, do you have enough total meeting time in any given month to cover the important and amount of issues that the council needs to cover? And if the belief has been that the way things have run all these years is that 1 meeting was getting all the important business covered, even though we were having these really long meetings, then that's one thing. So if the goal of this now sort of new terminology of a second meeting is to add more agenda items or to allow to do more business, that's one thing. But we've had a problem here, which is a problem of efficiency and reasonability. And so 8 of the last 13 regular town council meetings went past midnight. And this new proposal to say max out at 11:30, even that's getting a little late for a lot of folks in town. And I brought up this issue before about maximizing citizen participation, which diminishes as we go later into the night. As well, everybody's capacity to be sharp, retain information. I think these details about staff managing their time, the amount of time it takes to prepare, how disruptive it is if they have to do things multiple times during the month, changing town code, whether it's a regular meeting or a special meeting, all of this procedural stuff, you're all smart enough people to figure that out and work that out. The real question is, are we still going to be vulnerable to mega long meetings, or is the special second meeting, whatever you call it, whatever the structure, legal terminology is the idea that things that we know ahead of time, like 5G, cannabis, there are certain issues that we know bring a lot of people out, bring a lot of comments and go longer. There are certain presentations that you all have where experts come in, they're showing things around a budget, or showing something about zones and something to do with climate or whatever it may be, and those things often go long. And so if this is going to allow you all now to move those hot topic items that go a long way into that special meeting, and that's what's going to allow the regular meeting to be more normalized, at least that's an attempt at something. But I feel that the goal should be to have a reasonable thing so that you all can be sharp, so that the town can be present and see what's going on, And, you know, the proposal that I gave you all was only solving part of that. I don't know whether you need a second or special meeting to cover even more business, but I gave you an elegant way to become more efficient and take what takes typically 4 and 5 hours now and break it into a 2 and a 3 hour instead of 1 5 hour. If that doesn't work for whatever reasons, legal or otherwise, I think that's at least a reasonable goal. And I would just say, since I'm running out of time, that it's not only the public speaking that takes a long time. Deliberations often go very, very long. And you're not always so self-disciplined at, you know, being concise in your comments. Often council members are repeating each other's things and not bringing new information in. So there's many, many reasons that things drag on. And it just struck me that it was things that happen like appointments and honors and memorials and a moment of silence and those kinds of things that sometimes push, don't even get started into the real work until 8:30 sometimes. So anyway, I would say think about it creatively, and anything to help improve the situation is better. And of course, figure out how much business you need to conduct in any given month so you can get it all done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Richard. Appreciate the input. Next speaker, please.
The next speaker is Pamela Miggs, followed by Mal 9.
I think you can hear me now.
Hi, Pam.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Boy, this is a long time coming. I feel like I'm aging going over this about the 2 meetings. Being on a board myself for the last 10 years, we don't get into this because we start our meeting earlier, if that helps. One of the board members has 2 younger children, and we decided that it was hard for her to stay up late. So we created to run earlier. And we sort of add in special meetings here and there. But I would say on an average, you probably have more business than we have, but I would say we generally have a special meeting about every other month. Right now it's heating up because of Larkspur Landing. There's more, but that's how we do it. I don't think this is complicated. I don't think talking about, I'm sorry, Garrett, for 15, 20 minutes, I got lost in that shuffle. So I'm just hoping you can look at it with a really clear mind that it doesn't have to be that complicated. And also, yes, it will be a change in workflow. I agree. And people adjust. And, you know, you figure out some people can do some more other things and help each other out. I think, yes, that will happen. But the biggest thing for me is democracy. And I feel that the democracy for me, I am not going to stay up till midnight, 1 o'clock. And I have, and I just finally gave up and went to bed. But I love the meetings. I love the town, but I cannot participate in democracy at that time of night. And I don't think a lot of other people can either. So it's thwarted, you know, it's really thwarted democracy. And I'm really hoping that change is going to be a good thing there. And yeah, like I said, it'll be a little bumpy and people won't like it, but you know, change can really make things good. So I don't want to sound like I'm chastising you all, but I really want to attend. And people that are vulnerable, old people, sick people, young families, I want them to go to the meetings. So sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Next speaker, please.
The next speaker is Mal 9.
Hi, it's Mallory.
Hi.
Okay, well, then I'll do the chastising since, okay, a couple of things. I completely agree with the last 2 speakers. In fact, my notes were almost the same as what Richard was talking about. So here's the deal. First of all, I want you to consider that 11:30 is too late for pretty much everybody. Mostly everybody, except people who are night owls like me, and that's not a lot of the people. So if we're doing from 7 to 12:30 onto meetings, which we have, then just two meetings that are 2 hours each, or 2 hours and 15 minutes each. It's going to be the same agenda. It'll just be over 2 different times, so people actually can participate and stay up. And now I think Garrett said putting the town the issues that the town are most interested in earlier. Why now? We have been begging you guys to do that for a really long time. I mean, for me, probably over 2 years, if not more. So, and you know which the hot ticket items are for most of the town. And I just, it just feels like it doesn't matter. You just want to put them further away so people like, those of us who are very vocal, you don't get to hear very long, or they're not there. So I want you to really, if this is what a special meeting does, I'm for it. I'm okay with a special meeting. If the only major difference is we don't have, time to say, for public speaking time. If we're doing it one time a month, which is what we're doing now, I'm okay with that. I also want, and I'm confused about when you brought up, Garrett, why the time it'll take more for the staff to prepare. If we're doing half of what we're doing, there shouldn't be that much extra time per meeting. It should be the same agenda, only split in half. And the other thing I want you guys to consider is why don't we also keep the Zoom meeting as well as a public meeting, an in-person meeting when this comes back? Because I think that would be really great for a lot of people who can't get to meetings or have kids at night who need to take care of them. And if it's not that much extra for Michelle or whatever the cost is, I think it's worth it to just keep the Zoom meeting as well. And, keeping a shorter meeting, again, I just want to reiterate, and keeping the important items in the beginning, even on a shorter meeting, from 8 to 9 or whatever, I think it's really going to serve the town. And, we'll feel like you guys really care about what we're doing here. And I know you care, but it doesn't come across like that when
Mallory,
you put it out later. I'm done?
I really
Okay.
care that you're done. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right. I'm glad you care.
Appreciate the suggestion.
Okay. Take care, you guys. Be safe.
Thank you. Next speaker. Do we have any more speakers, Michelle?
I do not see any more speakers, Madam Mayor.
Okay, then
Can I
let's
just say one little thing? I
Go
didn't get
for
an update about the second meeting that was continued this week. And I don't know if you sent it out, but we didn't get one. And I think people should have known if you didn't send it out.
Okay, it's the same agenda, and it is both were on the website, and it was explained what had happened in order,
Yeah,
what.
nobody remembers 2 weeks later.
Okay, I'll make sure those communications go out. Thank you, Mallory. Okay, so we're going to bring it back to council for consideration, and I would like to start with Stephanie, and I will say, even before Stephanie starts, is Stephanie has brought this and has been very very dedicated to this for a long time. So I really want to credit Stephanie with this conversation coming forward. It's taken a long time to bring it, but I think it's vital, especially in these times when everything is hot and we need time as a community to consider things. So Stephanie, do you want to start?
I do. Thank you, Renee. I appreciate it. And thank you, Garrett and staff, for putting this together. I really appreciate this being brought forward. Yeah, I'm very passionate about this topic. And I would agree with some of the commentary. This is absolutely about access to democracy, and that's really the core of it for me. And I like to go to bed early, frankly. So, I don't want to be making decisions that late at night. I don't think it's reasonable. I don't think it's responsible. And so I have a few comments. This is not how I would have designed it, but I'm open to this structure. And I just want to talk a little bit about some comments I have, just a few questions, and then I'd like to hear from everyone else. So I do think there is opportunity for discipline across the board in how we manage these meetings. So to the point of efficiency, I think there's opportunity for all of us, myself included, and my colleagues, as well as staff. I think we need to be crisper in how we speak, be more brief. These meetings I find are not as efficient as they could be. We should not be exchanging with the public during open time. We know our community, we see the people we recognize, they're our neighbors, they're our friends, but we really shouldn't be exchanging. So I won't go on and on about that, but I also think that I would like to understand how we are measuring success of this pilot, and I'd like to be part of that. So Garrett, we can talk about that, but I don't want to be 6 months down the road and say, you know, this is how we deem this pilot. I would like to be part of how we are measuring success of this pilot, and we can talk about that in a minute, because I'd like to hear from everybody on that. As far as workflow, you know, this is clearly a change management opportunity for all of us, right? And so I see that it will impact staff, but when you say working till 2 a.m. is not a reason not to do this, Garrett, I see strain and stress on the staff, absolutely a reason to do this. And that's another like core reason why we should not be having Michelle and yourself here at 2 a.m. in the morning. So, you know, I also think that's another very, very important reason we should be considering. And I just don't think it's reasonable to ask staff to be working that late. I would also like us to consider a 6 p.m. start time. I thought we had that on the staff report last time, and then it got updated, and I don't see that here. You know, with COVID, employers are being a lot more flexible, and I think most of the public could arrive at that time for our regular meeting. If it's not the special meeting, maybe the regular meeting, and we could get through announcements and so forth, get through the early part of the meeting. So I would like to talk about that. And I think that's it. If we could just have some discussion around the measurements of success, I would appreciate it. And thank you very much again.
Okay, great, thank you. Any next person, go for it. Bruce? Bruce?
Yeah, as far as a measurement of success, it would seem like if we can try this out and we find that we are getting to the issues that we need to get to, we're not having to put them off for many months because we just don't have time, and we're getting finished at an earlier hour so that we're not just really stretching it. That to me would be, it's kind of hard to quantify that, but that to me is kind of the goals. And I do like the proposal of having one regular meeting and one special meeting for the reasons that are in the staff report, primarily that we save on the open time and announcements in the special meeting, and therefore we'd be able to get to items, the core big items earlier, which is, I think, what the public is asking us to do. I will say, as far as the public comment, I think we have pretty much always tried to put the major items, the items that we think will be of the greatest public interest, at the beginning of the meeting. I don't think there's ever been a time when we haven't done that. So I just want to say that. Now, sometimes you don't know. Sometimes it's hard to tell what's going to have the biggest interest. For example, at the October 7th meeting that Garrett analyzed in the staff report, that included pulling an item from consent, which I actually thought ahead of time that item might be pulled from consent, but it wasn't widely thought that because that's why it was on consent. And it turned out to be a time-consuming item. So you just never know. But I don't think there's been any missing on the part of people who have set up the agenda over the years of the goal of putting important things at the beginning. That's what we try to do. It's just hard to do. Anyway, I'm in favor of the one regular and one special meeting and evaluated after, as the staff report says, after 7 months. That sounds like a good thing. And I would throw in that, what if we tried starting the special meetings a little earlier? I do enjoy when they start a little earlier. 6:30 or even 6 o'clock, I find that to be refreshing. With the few times that we've tried that, it doesn't cramp my schedule during the day any more than a 7 o'clock meeting, and it just gets on with it when we still have a little more energy left. So that would be my proposal, would be a regular meeting, stay at 7 o'clock like we have been, but the special meetings, let's try starting them at 6. And then when we evaluate all this, we'll find out how the public liked coming in at 6, whether that was possible for most people. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Next council member want to make some comments? John?
There we go. Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of the comments, almost all of the comments by everybody. I mean, I think it's really important for democracy to have public meetings that people have access to, that people, you know, can make their feelings heard. You know, and everybody could be more efficient. I mean, it could be, you know, I mean, a lot of times if it's a public item and somebody has what they want to say, and even if somebody else has already said pretty much the same thing, they still want to say their piece because it's really their piece that they want to say. In terms of the council, you know, I mean, we certainly realize, but, you know, the public is less apt to realize that we have to do all of our thinking in public right here. This is the only chance we have to talk with each other about the issue. And so sometimes it goes on for a little while. But we could be more efficient, myself included. I think the staff proposal of a regular and a special is good, and I think Bruce's approach of maybe starting the special at 6:30 is a good idea. But the main thing that I would like to say is that if the objective is really not going too late and having democracy, I mean, it seems like to me that there's 4 main objectives, at least from the public thing. You know, the public wants a chance to speak to all these issues, and they're frustrated when it goes late and they don't know when it's coming. They don't want to sit there all night waiting for it to come and then just continue to the next special meeting or whatever. It's very frustrating. And, you know, and if it gets too late that you want to go to sleep, then that's a problem on that level also. So I'm fine with trying the 2 meeting approach with this. I mean, it doesn't change those things that I just listed, the not knowing when things are going to come up and stuff. And I've made proposals over the years on different ways that we can let people know when their item is going to come up soon. It's very hard for us to know, but you know, maybe there's a way we can solve that, because I think that would be key, because people really want to speak and they want to be heard and they want to hear what other people have to say about things. But if they're just sitting there for 4 hours hoping that to, you know, get for their item to come up, that's very frustrating. So, you know, some of the ideas I've had is, you know, having a posted moving schedule that maybe isn't, if it's a Zoom meeting there, maybe there's a way we can run that in the sidebar, much as the chat runs. Even probably throw it out to the community, how to come up with some texting system so that, you know, somebody doesn't have to manage it, but it's kind of self-managing. They can sign up for something when an agenda item's coming up, they can get a text. You know, probably the easier way to do it is just do it on a sidebar here and have an estimated time thing. You could have a schedule when we hit certain items, but that's going to go out the window because it's too many unknowns. But I think really looking at those things that make the meeting go really long, that is not as much of an issue as how to let people to know how they can tune in when they want to tune in. And, I think, some of the frustration I hear from Mallory is she wants to speak on items often that other, are less popular than other people's items, and it gets pushed later. And so she's frustrated with that. Now I can understand that. But if she knew that her item was going to get pushed later ahead of time, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. Let me see. I think I've kind of hit my points. The consent really depends on what goes on consent. If it really is just stuff that's gonna, doesn't need a lot of discussion, that's really what consent is for. It's kind of sometimes wishful thinking to put some of the stuff on consent that we do. But those are my comments pretty much. But really, I think
Okay, thank you, John.
outside the box is important.
Barbara.
Yeah, so I'm supportive of the idea of the one special meeting a month and starting earlier. I would say that for essential workers, I think it's a little different than people that work at home. So I think trying to start at 6 might not work for some folks who, so I think 6:30 maybe, which is staff recommendations, might work better for more people. But I would say this, this issue of meetings going long in Fairfax is not something new. This has been going on way back in the days when Frank Egger was on the council. And we also have a very engaged community in Fairfax, much more so than other communities. I sit on the Community Media Center of Marin's board, and I watch a lot of other council meetings. It's very different. We had 13 meetings on cannabis, and that didn't include the medical cannabis meetings. Most councils did 2 meetings, maybe 4, with not the amount of public comment that we had. 5G, most councils did 2 meetings on that. We did somewhere upwards of 8. So it's things that may not appear significant. For example, the item that got pulled off consent last time, which was really a very positive thing about refinancing our pension obligations, and we'd actually had a special meeting on that. I was actually kind of surprised that it went 2.5 hours. It was a very positive thing that's saving us $4.65 million over 17 years. But we got a lot of comment on that. But that's what happens in Fairfax. I agree with Bruce that, and even when I was mayor, we always tried to put the important items up first. But you can't always predict what's important to some versus others. And the fact that very frequently items will take 3 hours. That's just the way it goes. We are blessed with a very engaged community on many things. So I think it's well worth trying out the 6 months for the special meeting. I think it will also, even though, I think some of the people in the community don't realize that writing staff reports is not just sitting down and writing a staff report. It's research. It's a lot of work. And there are other duties that people are trying to do. But I think for Garrett, Michelle, and whoever else on staff who are sitting on these meetings, some of them start at 8 o'clock, some of them start at 7, like our Chief Moran. They're going to be really fried the next day. I don't have a problem staying up till 2 in the morning, although I don't normally do that, and making decisions. But I know the next day, I don't have much brain power left. So if I had to go to a full-time job, it might be difficult. So I say we go with the special meetings for the next 6 months. We cancel them if not needed. And we also try to do something which I know was not popular when I tried it, but where we have a lot of folks wanting to speak on a topic, we ask people to raise their hands. How many people want to speak on a topic? And change it to 2 minutes. I've seen this happen in San Rafael and all over the county. And we also just remember, when item first comes up and staff does a report, we're only supposed to ask questions. All of us tend to do some deliberation, including myself. We're all guilty. And then it comes back. When it comes back after public comment, that is the time for deliberation and not continuing to repeat. But I will also argue that business meetings are different than community meetings. These can't be run as efficient as a business meeting, and that's what community interaction is about. So I think we do our best, and I don't think we need to have strict performance measures. I think we need to look at the kind of items that were looked at this staff report. When did you get to those items? When were you able to complete the meeting? I think there's more simple metrics that really need to be looked at, and how sustainable is it? So I'm good with moving forward on the staff recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I wanted to just throw in a little bit different perspective. When I became mayor, I felt as though it was vital that I give everyone 3 minutes. I feel as though I've worked with enough young people in teaching them how to advocate for what it is that they believe or how they want to move decision makers. And for them, I watch them prepare those 3 minutes. And if they get to a meeting and they're told 1 minute or 2 minutes, you don't get to really make your point. And people prepare, and I honor that. There's nothing worse than running out of time. So I have grappled with something that Richard Applebaum has brought up many times, is it's frustrating that we do not have any interaction opportunity in our meetings. So people make a comment, we bring it back, we deliberate, maybe we misunderstood, and there's no more room for back and forth. So what I'm wondering, and Garrett, maybe you could help me answer this question, were we to have, let's say, a special meeting and pull 2 items that we know are big topic items for everyone, and again, most of our items are big topic items, could we have the flexibility to open it up to more of a forum kind of format, where if we knew we had only 2 items and that was the agenda for the special meeting, where we could conduct it a little bit more like a workshop with some with controls and restraints in terms of how we accomplish what we want to get to, but that would give us that opportunity should we choose. Is that correct?
What you're talking about is what you would refer to as a forum or a workshop type format, where it's questions and there's more interaction. If you're doing it for a specific item in which you're going to take an action, I think you're going to have problems, because you need to take an action, but in essence, you're going to let everybody comment twice. Then are you responding to those questions and other people get up? So it's a matter of the fairness issue. And really, I wouldn't recommend that, because that's just not going to work if you're going to try to deliberate on something. If you believe like something like cannabis requires a lot more work, then it's a workshop forum where you're not taking action, but you're answering questions, you're hitting the feedback and going back and forth. And it's a workshop forum, that type of setting.
Right. Although, I do know that all of our workshops and community meetings are considered special meetings.
No, you could do that as it's a special meeting, but you have to remember, you're not, typically the workshops and forums, you're not taking any action. And really what you have is, you could have a facilitator, maybe not, but it's to be a more of an informal setting where that's the whole purpose. It's not something where you're actually, as Janet, I think she said, a quasi-judicial, where you're making you're making a decision.
Right.
Instead of going, oh, Janet, are you trying to say something?
Yes, if I may, thank you.
Yes,
You
please.
can't do that. You can't have that back and forth on a quasi judicial or adjudicatory matter because you need to open the public hearing, take the testimony, close the public hearing, deliberate. So there can't be that real back and forth on a quasi judicial or adjudicatory matter. That's when somebody comes before you with an application. If you're talking about a legislative matter where you're talking about an ordinance to adopt, say cannabis, say the 5G, any of those types of things, you can, but I think what Garrett is saying is that it's more efficient and it's a better use of everybody's time to not do that with an action item, to do that more in a workshop setting, to get that back and forth and that input, because you may be finding that you need to change things and then you have an ordinance in front of you that needs to be changed, so then we need to continue it to the next meeting, that kind of thing. So it's not really all that efficient a use of time for legislative or administrative type of matters, but you absolutely need to have a start point and an end point on public hearings for quasi-judicial or adjudicatory matters.
Okay, so it may be that what I'm trying to say is that we would have flexibility with this structure of having one regular meeting and one special meeting to use the special meeting in more of a workshop form so that we would have the chance to really hear from the public and to grapple with things in that setting so that when we did bring the ordinance back in a public hearing kind of setting, that we could just do our judicial duty or legislative duty. So anyway, I don't want to take it down. What I really wanted to just say is that I will say that the number of special meetings for things, and I think that the importance of those special meetings is that people want to talk about the ones I've been involved in, just a few to mention, the downtown center, I wanted to bring Mike McGuire to talk about the new housing bills. We're going into emergency preparedness. These are robust conversations that people want to have with their council. So I would like to create, and the reason I brought this forward and helped with this recommendation is that I believe we need the flexibility to really dig in when there is need. We needed the Res J interviews, that was a special meeting. We held a listening session, that was a special meeting. We had the downtown recovery plan, and these things we need to be able to have. So I agree with what everyone has said. I really feel strongly that we go forward for this 6 months as a trial to getting people to be able to be part of this democracy at a reasonable hour and have the time to do it. So I vote to move forward that way. John?
Yeah, brief comment. On the Transportation Authority, we have a number of agenda items, and it's clearly labeled whether it's a discussion or whether it's an action item. And so on the discussion items, you know, there may be direction given to staff or just an update or, you know, some interaction. I think it, you know, adopting something like that where it's clearly delineated ahead of time may serve your interest there of having that robust discussion with the community separate from when we're making this judicial decision. And Janet, would that actually, am I right there? Hopefully.
I'm sorry about that. So yeah, you can, what I think you said was that you want to do it separately at the special meeting. You want to have the back and forth?
If something is agendized as a discussion, and then, I mean, obviously we got to come back and take another bite at the apple, but then the contents of that discussion then goes into the actual decision that's before us that we're making.
Well, yes, I mean that,
yeah.
You mean?
It just gives more public discussion and back and forth that Renee is looking for.
You're just talking about legislative items though, right?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Yeah, it all is part of the public hearing process for legislative items. It's not so strict for legislative items as it is for the quasi-judicial ones, where somebody is looking to you as an impartial, unbiased decision maker. You're like sitting like a judge.
Right.
When it's a legislative item, you're sitting like a legislator, right?
Sure.
So it's different. It's sort of a different hat you wear.
Yeah, understood. But I think what Renee is looking at is a robust discussion around policy ahead of that, and not a decision on a particular.
Right, right, yes.
Can I just add something, Mayor? I think we have done special listening sessions or interactive sessions when it's needed. To start thinking about every special meeting doing that completely defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do with these special meetings. And so should it be that we come up to another topic like a cannabis or a small cell issue, then I think we decide that we want to do a more interactive type community meeting rather than this. But
I agree. That was my point. I maybe didn't make it very well.
Okay, well then I was confused because I think we should go ahead and make the motion to schedule the one special meeting per month and potentially for 6 months and potentially start at 6:30 for those meetings would be the motion. I'll make that motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Okay. So we have a motion. Kohler, Garrett, are we missing something?
Just one question. Councilmember Hellman mentioned measures of success. You don't have to have that discussion now, but I think it's the council, you probably should have a discussion on what you think these measures should be. Because if a measure is just providing more opportunity for people to talk about things back and forth, that's clearly different than trying to go through, get more things done. Because as Councilmember Kohler pointed out, I think cannabis was 20-something meetings over 2 years. A measure of success on that one would be that you actually adopted something, but it took a long time. So, is it the meetings you get done at 11:30? It's how many items? Public people felt like they were heard sooner. And so I think the council needs to have a discussion as an agenda item to talk about how you're going to measure that. You don't need to talk about that tonight. You can do it at any future meeting as long as it's, you're going to want to have it sooner rather than later, but you definitely don't need to discuss that this evening. But it would be good to have that consensus from the council.
Okay, so would someone like to add that to the motion?
I will add that we will discuss measures of success at a subsequent meeting, and perhaps I would suggest that staff put something together as suggested measures of success. But I think I would just one diversion is, I think when Renee brought up the idea of these special interactive meetings, I don't think that's what we're talking about. Right now, we're talking about a special meeting rather than a second regular meeting so that we can cover items of interest. And so my motion is this, that we start most special meetings at 6:30, that they be scheduled over 6 months, and at a subsequent council meeting, we have a straw person of what the measures of success would be that we can discuss. Garrett, does that get to it? Renee, Stephanie, does that get to what you're looking for?
Okay, so John, are you still there to second that?
Yes, I will still second that.
So motion Kohler.
With friendly instruction, if people have ideas on measurements of success, to get those ideas to town staff, so that they can consider them.
Okay.
And then
Kohler and second read, Council Member Kohler.
But it looked like Garrett had his finger up.
Sorry, just to point out, at your November meeting, we'll come back to you with the special meeting schedule for you to discuss, but we won't come back, obviously, in the November meeting with the measures of success. Sure. A future meeting.
Okay, very good.
Okay, so
aye.
You vote aye. Okay, Councilmember Hellman. You're muted for your blessings. You're muted.
With gratitude to Garrett and Mayor Goddard and all of my colleagues, yes, aye, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Reed,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Ackerman,
Aye.
and myself, I vote amen. Aye. And the motion carries. So we're going to move on to our third item of the evening, which is to receive a report on the town's business recovery programs and to provide direction on the extension of the terms of temporary encroachment permits and temporary outdoor use permits beyond the November 30th, 2020 expiration date and the uses of other public spaces. This was also continued from the October 7th council meeting, and I am going to go ahead and hand this over to Garrett for a staff report. And at this time, actually, Garrett, before I do that, I know that we have members of the Chamber of Commerce here, and we also have John Bella, who generously volunteered and donated his time to help us to design some of the spaces that we're talking about tonight. So I'd like to invite them, Michelle, if you would do so, invite them to become panelists on this so that we can hear from them. So that would be Kaz Bagley, who's the president of the Chamber of Commerce, David Smadbeck, who is the executive director, and John Bella from Gale Designs.
Okay, Madam Mayor, I am doing that now.
Okay, terrific.
Madam Mayor, one point of order. Can we also open the special meeting item of the introduction of the ordinance? Because the staff report will actually touch on that too. And then rather than making another staff report on the same thing, it'd be good.
I think it's open already.
Well, it's item number 1 on the special, but I just want to make clear that we're considering that as part of this item. So at the same time, it's concurrent. So that way I only have to make one staff report.
Okay, excellent. So I hope everyone got that. These items will be considered concurrently. One is the special meeting item within our special meeting of tonight, both which are open, but we will only receive one staff report. So with that, welcome David and Kaz and John, and Garrett is going to proceed with the staff report.
Okay, so you may recall back in June, the council took a series of actions to allow for outdoor dining and business uses. Specifically, you adopted a resolution to allow staff to issue what we refer to as temporary encroachment permits to allow outdoor dining and business uses in the public right-of-way, which really means parks and parking spaces. You also adopted an urgency ordinance allowing temporary use permits, which permit outdoor dining in private spaces such as parking lots. And you also granted staff the authority to close portions of mono parking lot and mono alley for outdoor seating uses. So to be clear, there's no fee for what we refer to as temporary encroachment permit, which is a TEP, and a temporary use permit, which is a TUP. So no fees, both are good for initial 120 days. They're approved administratively and they can be extended for a one-time 60-day period. So to date, we've done 6 TUPs and 9 TEPs. All of the permits are active either under the initial 120 days or with the 60-day extension. However, both the TEP and the TUP expire November 30th, 2020. And so some of the businesses obviously have approached the town about extending the deadlines for both TEPs and TUPs. And the reason is they want to know if they should invest in some type of weatherization of their outdoor spaces, whether on their private property or in the parking spaces. It just would help them decide if that's something that's worthwhile if they knew this is going to be extended. Just so you know, in the TEPs, generally, those are the platforms and railings that are in our parking spaces you see on Broadway and Bolinas. TUPs, the lodge has, which is tables, chairs, umbrellas, or whatever in their parking lots. And so lots of marine communities are kind of going through the same process to see what happens. Now, for staff, our recommendation is because it's given an uncertainty of COVID-19 regarding either vaccinations, limits on indoor uses, even though that's slightly been expanded with the latest public health order. Maybe there's a resurgence, who knows? We're actually recommending that we extend both the TEP and the TUP until May 31st, 2021. To be clear though, for this meeting, we're not asking for discussion regarding anything regarding any permanent improvements. We're saying let's just keep everything temporary, not having discussion on requests to make things permanent until May of next year. So how this would work is if the council said a TEP, temporary encroachment permits, they want to extend, then with that direction, we'd come back to you in November with a resolution that allows that to happen. With regard to TUPs, temporary use permits, that's the item on the special agenda, which would actually introduce an ordinance to be able to extend that expiration date. And I'll get a little more clarity on that. And it allows you to set the expiration date for TUPs by resolution. So that's your special meeting item. And the reason for that is in June, you adopted an urgency ordinance to allow TUPs. Now, urgency ordinance can't be extended, so you need a regular ordinance. So that's why we have a regular ordinance to keep that flexibility for the council. And the main reason for that introduction this evening is that a regular ordinance takes, you introduce it, that's one meeting, so this is a special meeting. Regular ordinances can only have the second reading, or what we call the adoption, second reading, at a regular council meeting. And so that would happen on November 4th if you were to introduce the ordinance tonight. What that does is it takes 30 days to take effect. So in essence, it would allow the TUBs to, in essence, take effect early December. And so you only have a few days where it wasn't in effect under the existing urgency ordinance. So that's more of a technical nature that we wanted to cover. But with that, I think some things we talked about, public spaces, Chamber is going to speak more to that. But as you know, Monolot, we've been closing Thursday through Sunday. The Chamber, and thank you to the Chamber, is coordinated with Gestalt House to maintain and set up that space. Gestalt House no longer closes Mono Avenues, so that's not what we're planning to do. I know the Chamber is going to share their thoughts on their survey they conducted for the Monolot. I think the only thing on the Monolot is that there have been requests for music, and so from staff's perspective, the county health order doesn't allow music, outdoor music at this time, because part of it is that's a public space and it's not a space that's controlled by one business. So if you're a business, you had outdoor area, you had music, you're able to control your seating, you're able to control your crowd, maintain social distancing. In a public space like that, there's really no such controls. And what would happen is if things got out of control with too many people being in one area with no social distancing, then we'd have to shut it down. And so we really don't want to be in position to do that. With that, I'd like to thank the Chamber for all their improvements they have done to the Monolot and all the volunteers and their efforts in setting up. I think that's been great. Appreciate all that help. With that pretty much concludes staff report. Again, in terms of action, what we're looking for, to be clear, is direction on the TEPs. That will come back to you November 4th. And then you have the special meeting item. If you want to extend TUPs and you're introducing an ordinance, and the expiration date in that ordinance can be set by resolution. We could talk about that more if that's too confusing. But the second reading in that ordinance will come back to you November 4th if you introduce it this evening. So that's the staff report, and I know you'd like to turn it over to the Chamber.
Okay, thank you, Garrett. So my recommendation for how we conduct the next this item is that we turn it over to the Chamber now. We hear from these three fine people, and then we can bring it back to council for questions, and we'll go out to the public, and then we'll bring it back and make some decisions. So I'll turn it over to you, David. And here he is, Mr. David Smadbeck.
All right. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, perfect.
Okay. We've sort of dubbed it the Shared Table Program, and we've nicknamed it Fairfax Plaza. It's a project that we started over Labor Day weekend. John Bella came with his crew of people, and they had made the design for the concrete, and they spent the weekend painting and did a fabulous job with that. We initially started Friday through Sunday, and it's eventually got expanded to Thursday through Sunday. And we've been setting it up at 10 a.m. In the morning, and it goes until approximately 9 or 10 at night. Sometimes it'll go earlier, just depending upon weather and activity. We put 4 beer tables and benches and 6 bistro tables with 12 chairs and with 7 umbrellas. We found that was about the max we could put on there and maintain social distancing of 6 feet between tables. The seating capacity is approximately 28, and we've got oh God, Vice from Gestalt House. Sorry, I don't know how you guys do this. Anyway, Gestalt House has generously offered to maintain the space and keep it clean. We initially spent about $2,800 for the materials. Fairfax Lumber donated a lot of the paint, most of the paint, and paint brushes and materials to do that. We've had a dedicated crew of people who have been coming every Thursday morning, and the Gestalt House is now taking it down and putting it away at night. We did have 1 bench stolen the first night that we had it set up, unfortunately, so now we have to chain them up, but it's actually not that hard to do. I do want to thank Chance Cutaro, Mayor Goddard and her family, Cormac Gannon, Bill Patterson from Four Paws Pet Shop, Fairfax Lumber, Mas Masa and Brad Schwann for allowing us to store during the off days our equipment over there, Kaz Begley from Fairfax, and Paul Helfrich. These are the people that have spent many a time. I forgot to mention Manuelita Antonio. I hope I said that right. And thanks, John. I'm going to turn it over to John, who did we have 2 surveys that we've sent out, one for the businesses and one for the public. And I'll have John do that. And if you guys have any questions of any of us, we'll follow that up. So John, why don't you go, and then Kaz, you go after John.
Thank you, David.
Wonderful. Thank you, David. And greetings, Mayor and Council. Nice to see you all again. I'm going to share my screen here. If Michelle could make me the host, please, or Garrett make me the host.
Hang on. Let me see. There you go.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, here we go. Can everybody see my screen okay there?
Yep.
All right. So thanks for that intro, David. And just to clarify here, I'm a volunteer. I've been just, working on some of this stuff. In my professional life, I'm an urban designer and a public space designer. So this is what I do for a living. But for all this work, I've been donating my time and energy and effort because I love this town. It's my new home. And so I've been wanting to do what I can to help support local businesses, our local economy, and to create, vibrant, thriving, inviting public life in the downtown. And so thrilled when David reached out and said, hey, we need some help with the plaza. If you all remember, this is what we discussed several months ago in terms of economic recovery plan. The original idea was to create these sidewalk extensions that would provide safe space for people to walk in the curb lane, and then also potentially explore opportunities for larger social gathering spaces, sidewalk extensions. I think what Garrett's referring to is the temporary encroachment permits. So this was the original concept, and I think I guess it was in June or July, council said, yeah, let's go for it. And since then, we've seen the emergence of a number of sidewalk extensions. I just took a few images here. The Fairfax Coffee Roastery sidewalk extension, and the Stillwater has built a nice sidewalk extension. And then, interestingly, I think some businesses who were initially reluctant to be part of the program, like Fratellizio's and Fairfax Cafe, have now embraced the idea of outdoor dining in particular outside their spaces. And then this is the sidewalk extension in front of Live Water and Amelie, which I think is quite successful. I think Gear and Gellies also is getting involved here. I'm not quite totally clear what this is, if they're this reserved curbside pickup space, if that was an official part of the program, or if that's something that they're just kind of leaning into on their own. And then also just noting that some other businesses have been taking advantage of public space in terms of extending their businesses. In the case of Hummingbird Cafe, I'm going to come back to a little bit later my personal opinion about what seems to be working and what's not working so well about these uses of the public space in the curb lane, but just wanted to give an overview. I'm sure you guys have all seen this. And then Mono Plaza, we had about 12 to 15 volunteers. My friends Alec and Talia really helped us round up a bunch of volunteers to do the painting here and get this plaza up and running. And then just so grateful for the chamber and David and crew who purchased the cafe tables and chairs and umbrellas and so forth. Seems to be working pretty well. Also some challenges with this space that I want to talk about in a bit, but we did manage to put together a couple of surveys to try to get public feedback about what was working, what's not working in these spaces. One survey was directed towards local businesses. Again, I sort of volunteered to help put this together. David really took the lead on sending it out to local businesses. I think there's something like 15 responses here. I'm going to go through it pretty quickly. I'm happy to share this deck afterward if you want to spend more time with it. And sorry we didn't get this out to you before the meeting, but anyway, I'm going to walk through it today, and I'll be happy to share this if you want to dive into it in more detail. So we asked about, are you a Fairfax business owner? What type of space are you using? So a range of use of outdoor spaces, whether it's the public space on the sidewalk, whether it's private space in areas which are currently dedicated for vehicle storage or parking, using the curb lane, that's the parking lane for outdoor dining or retail. So a variety of use of spaces. The pink there areas is businesses which aren't using any public or private outdoor space. I think these are probably the retailers among the businesses who were surveyed who haven't, been able to take advantage of this program to support their businesses. Again, this is only 13 responses, but we asked how important is this for your business right now? 46% said this is critical. Without this, the town allowing and council enabling the use of these outdoor spaces, these businesses would not be surviving. So that's pretty significant. Close to 50%, over 50% say this is not so critical for my business. Maybe that's because it's the business type. We asked, what was your operating capacity during COVID lockdown before council allowed the use of outdoor space? And close to over 70% said it was less than a quarter of our turnover, right? Compared to pre-COVID. After, council enabled the use of outdoor space, now we're seeing 75% of businesses have been able to ramp up significantly, some up to close to 100% capacity, others between 25 and 75% capacity. So there's undoubtedly here, even with this kind of limited number of respondents, that it's had a major impact, I think, on local businesses, and this was part of the intended outcome there. We tried to get a sense of, without asking the businesses about their specific kind of the dollar amount of their turnover, try to get a sense of the vitality of the business relative to employment. How many people did you employ were able to keep employed during the lockdown. It ranges from about 1 to 10 people. How many people does your business employ since the town has allowed the use of outdoor space? There was 2 respondents who were saying they were, up to 12 people. A couple of respondents saying 3 people actually saying they're able to employ 25 people or more. Would like to get better data on this, but the point here is that it seems like there's been significant impact in terms of employment numbers regarding the use of outdoor space and supporting, local businesses to expand and actually hire employees. Moving on, we asked the question about, do you support extending the use of downtown outdoor space beyond November? 64% said yes. Some said maybe, some said, not a lot of no's. Some interesting comments here, the extending past November would need to be permitted separately from the temporary use permit during the winter. Rain or lack of lights may create unsafe conditions for users, non-users, and traffic. Design of the area should be carefully thought through. I'd like to know the cost and benefit the business is receiving. So an individual comment there about if we're going to extend it, maybe we need to have some additional design considerations for what happens with these spaces, particularly as we head into the winter and maybe need a little bit more infrastructure to support outdoor dining during, less great weather. Do you support the creation of a parklet program in the town of Fairfax to enable longer-term use of the curb lane for outdoor dining and retail? So this would be, taking it a step further than extending the TEP or the other acronym that Garrett was using. Don't remember what that was. This would be about maybe formalizing this a bit further to say, can we take a step towards something which is semi-permanent? Parklets aren't permanent. Typically, they're an annual renewable permit, and the city issues the permit. The parklet sponsor would build the parklet and then maintain it. And if they didn't adhere to the city guide or the town guidelines, the town can then revoke the permit, and the parklet needs to be removed in 72 hours. That's how parklets generally work in other parts of the world. I just thought it'd be useful to ask the business community, is there some interest in this longer term? And it sounds like there's a fair amount of interest. There's also concerns from the types of businesses who don't benefit necessarily from what's been the kind of focus, which has been outdoor dining. So question here is, how can we support, folks who are doing retail and maybe have other types of businesses that aren't outdoor dining? I think this is what we had hoped to address with the sidewalk widening, in general, sort of carving out that space to allow for a safe walking, but also essentially sort of a wider sidewalk area, so that if you're a retailer, you could maybe spill out into the curb lane or onto the sidewalk and still allow people to safely pass in front of your shop. I think that was the original intent, and we haven't quite gotten there in terms of the kind of overall sidewalk extensions. But some concerns from businesses who aren't doing outdoor dining about what the benefit of this. There's some great, we asked about what are your ideas for the future use of outdoor space to support local businesses? We hope, some of the responses, we hope to be able to put a roof on the parklet, help people enjoy the outdoor through the winter. Seating is vital to our business. We've had nothing but a flood of great responses. Some folks said some parklets, but not all. I think it's really important to make sure the retail businesses or other businesses that are around parklets aren't suffering. I have a retail store, my business is down. I really like the outdoor spaces, but the town needs to pay attention to COVID rules. So whether that's about, drinking and serving food, or whether it's about, really enforcing the adherence of the 6 feet between tables. There's support for it, but this commenter wants to make sure that we're enforcing the health codes, which is really critical, particularly as we enter into winter. Continue to use mono lot permanently. The public loves it. I don't have specific ideas. I do think outdoor space adds to the vitality of downtown, and some even look attractive. And the mono dining court is nice. I'll send this to you guys so you can dive into a bit deeper. But overall, I'd say there's a lot of support among the folks that were surveyed here in terms of extending or expanding the program longer. These are just my personal recommendations as a volunteer. And I think there's some value in the town of Fairfax exploring a pilot parklet program, which would be something different, I think, from the extension of the TEP. Maybe extending the TEP through, through spring next year is the right next step. But it seems like there's enough interest and enough success in those spaces as temporary spaces or semi-permanent spaces that it might be worthwhile exploring a parklet program. And again, the framework for parklets, and the reason why I'm not calling the sidewalk extensions parklets is because parklets are public space. Parklet means public. And I don't feel like any of the sidewalk extensions there, with the exception of the mono lot, which is clearly a public plaza, I don't feel like a lot of those sidewalk extensions are fulfilling their obligation to the public realm in the way that they could if the town had a bit more control, design guidance about what the role they can fulfill regarding public access. I'm happy to answer questions about how parklet programs work in other parts of the world. Another key thing is maintaining clear pedestrian through zones. I think a lot of people are still intimidated to come to downtown because there's simply not enough safe space to walk, particularly on Bolinas, where the sidewalks are very narrow, and when businesses, are encroaching on the pedestrian through zone. I just don't think that's dignity for pedestrians. If we're trying to promote a walkable community in the town, we really have to make it very easy and intuitive for people to walk, whether or not you're mobility impaired or have a stroller or are an elder. And I don't think we're doing the best job of that in some cases where the outdoor dining is encroaching actually on what we should be keeping clear as a pedestrian through zone. One of the things that we talked about several months ago was this idea of a temporary bike lane, which could provide a buffer on Broadway. I still think that's worth considering. I feel like some of those outdoor dining areas feel a bit exposed there with the higher speed traffic on Broadway. And so part of the rationale of the temporary bikeway was to, yes, let's continue to make Fairfax inviting for the cycling culture, of which there's hundreds or thousands a week who are here stopping and spending money. Let's continue to make invitations for that community, but also let's utilize that piece of infrastructure to make it safer for the outdoor diners. That's something, again, this is my personal point of view, not representing the chamber here, but as a volunteer and as a professional public space designer, these are my recommendations. John King did an article from the Chronicle early in August that said restaurants are taking over parking spaces. Here are 6 ways to make them better. I refer you to that article. It's great. I think a lot of the sidewalk extensions are sort of hostile actually to the public realm in some ways, and I totally support that. There's an urgent need to support local businesses, but I think everyone agrees we could be doing a better job in terms of breaking ground and a little bit more generous in terms of design quality, in terms of how some of these sidewalk extensions meet and greet the public. There's some excellent guidance from many cities, but in particular, I wanted to share this one from the Civic Design Center in Nashville, who's now creating a county-wide program. So they've had success with their temporary uses for sidewalk extensions. Now they're going to do a countywide program, and they have. I sent this to the mayor I think a few weeks ago. I'm happy to send it out to council. It's a 4-page document, but it really outlines what all the kind of code requirements are and the guidelines are for creating a temporary parklet program. About setback from the curb, how much space you need from the through lane and from the vehicular circulation lane and so forth. Some basic guidelines I think that are pretty clear, but most importantly, a parklet is public space. This countywide extension that Nashville is doing is very clear that parklets must be publicly accessible with signs identifying use as public space. This is how they work in San Francisco and in many parts of the world. All seating is open to the public in addition to serving patrons at the restaurant. It's a quid pro quo. Right, the restaurant is getting something back from the town allowing them to use public space to serve their patrons, which is absolutely wonderful. At the same time, we think it's important that there's an act of generosity here, or an acknowledgement that the sidewalk and the curb lane is part of the public realm that we all share, and therefore should be open and accessible to all residents, whether or not you're, buying something from that particular space. Again, my personal point of view on this. I wanted to share the survey responses. We got 46 responses thus far from a survey that we created and put out in Fairfax Plaza. This is the closure of Mono Lot, half a Mono Lot. Just going through this quickly here. How often do you visit the plaza? Most people it's 1 or 2 times a week, or this is their first time. How long do you generally stay here? Seems like most people are staying between 20 to 30 minutes or about an hour. A few people over an hour. Oops, jumped ahead there. Sorry. How often do you visit the plaza? How long do you stay here? What are you doing in the plaza? Over 50% of people in the Mono Lot area brought takeout food or drink from Gestalt House, but 16% brought takeout food or drink from somewhere else. An equal number of people were just there meeting friends or just hanging out. One respondent said, I didn't know it was public. I thought it was for Gestalt House. Regarding risk of COVID. So one of the important considerations for any of this expansion of public realm was that we got to ensure that we're communicating the social distancing guidelines well. And it sounds like most respondents here, almost 90% said yes, people are following masks and social distancing norms. A few respondents said no, we need more space. People are not following distance guidelines, but the majority of respondents said yes, they feel safe regarding risk of COVID-19. We asked, would you like to see the space open 7 days a week? And over 90% of the respondents there said yes. And we just want to pause on this point for a moment. I know when council decided to move forward with creating the temporary plaza, initially we talked about 7 days a week, and then we thought, well, let's try what San Anselmo is doing, which is Thursday through Sunday. And so we kicked it off that way in the Fairfax Plaza. I have to say that I think there's some real drawbacks to that, of not having it, open to the public 7 days a week and having to kind of install and uninstall on a weekly basis. I also think there's been a degradation of the quality of the space when it gets, utilized for parking a couple days a week, and then I think it's also not allowing us to sort of to put in more features and amenities, which I think would draw more people and more types of people out to the space. So it's something I just wanted to bring up tonight and perhaps discuss about the value of doing 7 days a week, even in the temporary plaza experience. What other features would you like to see in this space? Here's a great example. It's hard for us to do anything like put in plants or greenery or shrubs, which, 30 people out of the respondents said, yeah, we'd love to have more green. It's hard to do that when you have to sort of install and deinstall every Monday and then bring it back on Thursday. It makes it much more difficult to add a bit more amenities. We asked if people wanted more seating, different seating. Lighting was a big one. Water or a drinking fountain, a small stage, vendor space, heat lamps. So there was some interest in kind of expanding and adding to the amenities that are offered in the space. Would you like to see the space made permanent? Close to 90% said yes. 11% said maybe. What shall we name the plaza? So Fairfax Plaza was the placeholder name. We had suggested the name Manuela Plaza, not because my partner's name is Manuelita, but actually because Manuela Saiz is, she inherited, part of the original land grant from when this was Mexico. And she donated the lands that would become all of the town of Fairfax's primary civic and public spaces, all the land around the town center and the existing green park. That was all donated from Manuela Saiz. And so I thought this could be an interesting way to honor her legacy. So 34% of people said, yeah, Manuela Plaza, nice name. But more people actually like the name Fairfax Plaza. So, hey, I think that's great. A couple silly suggestions there, sausage purgatory. Anyhow, I think this would be nice to open up to more folks. If council decides to extend this and keep it going, maybe we could open this up to maybe a bit more of the town to weigh in on possible names for a new public space in the town if council decides to extend it. Generally, a lot of support here. Enlarge it, more bike parking, great job, more music. Just generally, I think people are, excited by the opportunity to have social space and to hang out. There's a clear kind of latent need that this particular type of space seems to be tapping into. We've got the wonderful green park, where we host the farmers market. It's a beautiful space with the redwoods and the grass, but this kind of more plaza type space, I don't think we have anything quite like it in Fairfax. So there seems to be a latent need for that, and it seems to be kind of fulfilling that need. It seems to be pretty, pretty popular in the days that it's open. Who is spending time in this space? Most folks there were in the 25 to 44, but over 40% were in the 45 to 64 age range. Gender identity, so over half of the folks who respond to the survey identify as a man or a trans man, less women there. And this is something I wanted to bring up, which is, I think, certainly connected to the design features. My feeling is if we had a bit more greenery, more planting, some softer features, if we had more clear access to the bathrooms, that we might see more children spending time there. We might see more women spending time there. We might see more folks than the kind of, beer drinking cycling crowd. I think it's great that it's been very successful in fulfilling a niche for that particular group, but I think we could be doing better in terms of Fairfax demographics and who's spending time in that space, who feels invited. And I think that comes through actually making some design improvements and programming improvements that could invite, men or women and children to spend more time there. And perhaps, the space could also do a better job of representing Fairfax demographics and maybe, Marin demographics in terms of race and ethnicity. So about half of the respondents, just so you know, are from Fairfax, and then a lot of people from many other places around the Bay Area. So so there we go. So that was the survey. It's only been out for a couple weeks. David and others helped, put labels on all the cafe tables and chairs now that has a QR code linked to the survey. So the longer that's out there, we'll get more responses and more better data, I guess, over time. But I think we've learned a lot already from the time that the space has been up and running. Here's my recommendations. Again, personal point of view. I really think it merits, given the success of the space to date, it merits extending opening hours to 7 days a week. And I'm making that recommendation based on what I feel like we could do in terms of improving the quality of that space by being able to add planting, being able to add maybe a small stage and some lighting at night seems to be a kind of key thing. Critical to that, which I haven't noted here, is that you got to have a steward. If we open 7 days a week, is Gestalt House up for the job of opening and closing? We've been relying on a lot of volunteer labor and efforts to do that. I don't know if that's sustainable in the long term. I do feel like there's a strong demand for this type of space, but I also feel like we got to make sure we have the operations and maintenance and stewardship dialed in before we take it any further. If we were going to extend it and do some additional things, bike parking is clearly a problem, right? Over the half of the people that are using the space are coming by bike, but there's only a handful of bike parking. The bikes are sort of cluttered around, and I think that becomes an obstacle to, say, young children, families who kind of want to come in and hang out. If the bikes are sort of cluttering everywhere, it makes it less easy to navigate. I think some lighting in the evening would be helpful. Again, planting. I just think for the sake of civility, access to drinking water would be a wonderful thing, and then clear access to bathroom would make it a place that people would be able to spend more time and I think feel more comfortable if they knew they could also use a bathroom nearby. So okay, there we go. That was a quick share out about some of the things we've learned thus far.
Wow. Okay, John, thank you so much. I mean, I don't really have words. I wasn't prepared that you were going to do that, but it does give us quite a perspective. And yeah, I will be interested to hear what my colleagues think. And we all appreciate your time and your.
I think Kaz has a couple things she wanted to add.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, John. Okay, Kaz. Unmute, Kaz.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, John. We are definitely blessed to have you here at this time. Perfect timing for you to move to town. So thank you. So I just really wanted to put in a few words and speak on behalf of the Chamber and how we're feeling about the experience. And before I go much further, I want to say thank you to all of you council members and Mayor Goddard and Garrett and everybody who's been involved in allowing the merchants to do what they've been able to do so far. And that was the offering of the free of charge outdoor, the TEP and the TUP permits. It's just been absolutely brilliant. And as a downtown merchant myself, I truly thank you for the opportunity that brought to so many of us to look at how we could stay alive. So thank you. So we, the Chamber, feel that the parklets and the outdoor space are critical to helping business stay in businesses right now. It's unbelievably difficult as a downtown merchant and representing the merchants and listening to what they're saying about their challenges. But this really relieves some pressure. And we've got restaurants and people dining outside. We've got new restaurants who have come on the scene, 2 of them that have outdoor parklets, and they're doing really well. They're doing well enough to feel like they've been welcomed and supported by the community, and they would not have had that opportunity had the people not had the opportunity to come visit them. We have, as Garrett mentioned in his previous statement, that there are a lot of restaurants that are talking about what are we going to do for the winter and how are they going to winterize their space, design considerations that of course they need to know about. And so again, we need to know what kind of timeline or what kind of availability is this permit going to be. We recommend that the Chamber, we would like the town's support in continuing the outdoor program at least until we're able to establish some kind of normalcy in business again. Seasonal, all throughout the seasons, all throughout those changes, however long this goes, we businesses need the opportunity to continue doing business in this way. So we are in strong support of the permit being outdoor use being continued. The formality for which it goes through, and we'd like to play a supporting role in helping our businesses continue to do that.
Okay,
what else did I want to say?
I'm interrupting because I need to make sure that John, you need to give Michelle back the hosting. Otherwise, the whole meeting's going to end when you leave. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me see if I can do that now.
Okay, that would be great. Kaz, I'm sorry I cut you off. Did you want to finish?
No, I was pretty much done. I just wanted to say, I was on the meeting from the beginning when you guys were talking about your town meeting, and Pamela Miggs mentioned something, and I just thought it was I captured what she said. I want to mirror that. And she said, change can make things good. And I believe, and so do a lot of people that I'm talking to, that this change to the outdoor experience for our merchants has really made some goodness in our town. From the plaza that I see packed across the road from my business on a, Thursday through Sunday, to the merchants that I talk about who are using the outdoor space, it really has made things better. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate all the hard work you all and all the input. And John, your expertise in the big picture here. So if anyone on council has questions for John or David or Kaz, let's go ahead and ask those now. And then we can ask staff, and then we'll go out to the public. Barbara.
I have a question for John, and first of all, a big thank you for John for all the time you've dedicated to our town. We really appreciate it, and I'm sure we couldn't have done it without you, so thank you. And I ride my bike to other cities, and I see that nothing is happening like Fairfax every day of the week, to be frank. San Anselmo, Thursday through Sunday, has one area, but other areas really just don't have that kind of appeal, except parts of San Rafael. So I think we have enlivened things. But one of the things that I've seen, and I was wondering what your observations were on this, John, was one of the street extensions and one of the new restaurants, which is totally busy, and I think that's wonderful. It's extended out, so it's in front of a retail space, and I think it somewhat limited those folks in that retail space. For example, they used to have a rack outside, and I'm wondering if you have suggestions. I also see the tables really close together, and I think of super spreader events, but I'm just wondering if you have suggestions on some of the street extensions where maybe they could be a little shorter, or is there a way to accommodate the retail space on that sidewalk without totally making it so nobody can get through? And I'm just thinking of one example, but I think there are other places like that as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I briefly showed that image of the outdoor dining from Hummingbird, which I again totally support. Want to support local businesses, but I also feel like there's a case where, because that restaurant isn't able to use the curb lane, which is pretty generous on Broadway, they're now encroaching on the public space there. And so to me, and so that's an issue. It's a separate issue from what you described, but I wanted to highlight that. I think that's also happening on Broadway with the roastery, that the original intent with the what we called shoplets, which was extending the sidewalk out into the curb lane, was so that people could walk and pass while practicing safe social distancing, and they're not able to do that now. And I think it's a design issue. I think we could, if, with some additional design guidance, I think we could solve that problem. I think the issue, or the challenge of supporting retailers is a separate one. And I just think we got to, offer up some ideas and support. Actually, I think Kaz had some great ideas about, hey, rolling, I want to roll out my, I want to have movable or rollable vending carts, so I can roll out my materials into the parking lane where I can, show my wares, and people can, without having to enter the store with limited access guidance, actually, I can do some shopping with a retail outlet. We haven't figured that out yet. And so, but I totally support that. I think that's a good next step. I think we've done a pretty good job of figuring out how to solve the challenge for food and beverage, right, for outdoor dining. I think there's some other examples around the country now which are specifically focused on supporting retailers. So I think that's a great idea. And I would say that, perhaps we could explore some additional space, some additional use of the curb lane, which we outlined in that original plan, to support retailers specifically, and maybe there's just like the chamber has kind of stepped forward to support, and get some cafe tables and chairs out and umbrellas. Maybe we can also try to do something similar for some of the retailers who have very different needs, I think, than the outdoor dining.
I think the one piece of that that's going to be difficult. So for example, live water, often there's one person in that store. They won't have the ability, and I think the street extension near their store is great for the restaurant, but it's encroaching on that sidewalk area. So if all they wanted to do was put a rack outside, which they could easily watch, there's limited movement. So, you know, we have to think about that. May be a great idea, but a lot of these businesses only have one person on at a time. So we don't have the big retail outlets where you have 3 people working or even 2 people working often. So I guess just put your thinking cap about that. I mean, I'm just wondering if one of the things we could do is ask some of these street extensions to shorten their space a little bit, or even though we're not moving into formal parklets, because I think that's a bigger conversation with the town as a whole rather than just a survey. Is it possible to even ask people who have street extensions to allow their space to be used as public space? Is that something you've seen before, John?
Well, so with many of the parklet programs around the country and around the world, you know, one of the features is that they're publicly accessible. So by that I mean, you know, you don't have to pay to be able to sit there. So they're essentially an extension of the sidewalk into the curb lane, conceptually, versus a cafe table and chair permit, which is about actually commercializing some of the public realm. And so, yeah, I don't see, you know, why not, in terms of maybe some additional guidelines if the program's extended to talk about, you know, maintaining public access, maintaining ability for local retailers to utilize some of that space. I think, you know, I'd be interested to hear from Live Water as well as Fairfax Variety, you know, about what the spillover effect has been of having those sidewalk extensions. My hunch is that during lockdown, when there wasn't a lot of life in the street, you know, that there wasn't a lot of spillover happening from the sidewalk extensions into some of those other types of businesses. But if you've got now 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people an hour, you know, outdoor dining and now walking by our local retailers, I can't imagine that they're not getting some additional patrons going in there. And if there's something about visibility, you know, specifically with Live Water, let's work it out. Let's try some different options there. If it's about getting more transparency into the facade, into the storefront, I think that's a great idea. And my hunch is that a lot of the activity we're seeing in the street is likely having a spillover effect on other types of businesses, just as we get more people spending time downtown now.
Okay, I think we have heard from Live Water, and they haven't expressed that, but I've heard from Fairfax Variety that she's very open to Hummingbird expanding into her area because she wants her to survive. So, and she's been there a very long time. But thank you so much for all your hard work, John, and for your good ideas.
And if I may, everyone, just to remind us that, as Garrett recommended in the staff report, we really are not looking at even having the permanence conversation until, if the council decides to extend through May 31st, then that would be the point at the expiration. That would be the point about, you know, we would start talking about permanence and having to get creative about exactly these things that you bring up. This is absolutely a beginning step and a work in progress. It's how Fairfax is. We're organic. We don't top down plop it in and then see what happens. We're going slow. So thanks for everyone remembering that. And we'll see what the council thinks. So were there any other questions of John or the chamber before we go out to the public? No? Okay, terrific. Well, you guys are welcome to hang out and listen to the public in case there's something, or we just thank you for your time.
Just a quick note to say that if council decides to extend through May, you know, it could be useful to talk about some additional design guidance to support retailers who aren't currently benefiting from the program, and to maybe consider, you know, some guidelines for public accessibility. Even if you decide to do this short-term thing through May, you know,
Yeah.
I think you could, based upon what's happened thus far, we can learn, we've learned by doing, right? And now I think we can maybe do some updates that can improve things for everyone.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
If am I on mute? If David's gonna take off, I just wanted to, I have several thoughts, but I wanted to wait for the public to comment first. But with regard to this survey that John provided, it looks to me like you have two surveys, one of the small business community and one of the actual users of the product, if you will. And I would like to ask that you broaden that audience and that we get a larger community read from the public. Because as you said, John, I think my perception is we didn't do a formal launch, and that there's not a real understanding or broad awareness of what it is. I think that a lot of people think it's actually an extension of Gestalt House. And so, you know, and some of the questions, the way where they were structured, you know, around social distancing and so forth, I mean, if they're coming back, obviously they feel safe, right? So, you know, you're asking users of the product. So, you know, I'm comfortable with the survey, but I would ask that you broaden it to get a community read, like I said. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. And whether that's the role of the chamber, or maybe it's the, you know, the city should do a survey about the program, you know, again, this was just my volunteer time putting together what I could.
Yeah.
Kind of get some information about those spaces. I totally support the idea of a broader survey. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And we do have a tool. We use Peak Democracy for many more community-wide kinds of input gathering. So I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
To send that out wider.
Great, thank you.
Okay, and John?
Does the chamber have to leave right now? I mean, are we up against that? But I mean, I'm going out to the public, and I have things that I would like to interact with them also during our discussion, so.
I'm not going.
Okay, okay, well, Renee was saying that they might, so.
Oh no, I was just trying to give them that permission to not sit up here in a box.
I prefer not to give them that permission if we could be so bold.
All right, terrific. So let's go on out to hear what the public has to say, and then we'll come back up, a little more discussion, and then really get to the actual action item, which is to decide about the extension of these permits. Michelle, could you help us invite public comment? Thanks.
I'd be happy to. I see two raised hands right now. The first is Alex Schuldener, followed by Richard Hamer. So Alec.
Hello. Hello. I'm glad we're having this topic on the agenda. I'm glad it's working out so well for the town. And I, of course, am very strongly in favor of extending the program and seeing this through the winter and into May. I think, though, in order to make sure that it lasts that long, we need to take a look at the safety of the program. And the original plan, as John has pointed out, did call for bike lanes on Broadway in order to provide that buffer space between the people who are seated out there on on Broadway and vehicular traffic. I think we should return to that. I'm still not clear on why. It just seems an obvious thing to do, and why that wasn't included in the plan. I think it'll also make the space more attractive, and as winter comes on and the space it's maybe less obvious to be sitting outside. Whatever we can do to bolster use of that space is probably a good idea. So I'd like to encourage us to reintroduce that so that we don't have an accident or something really unfortunate happen, which really sets the whole program back. I think for the same reason, the other safety issue around this is still the sidewalks. And you know, when I go downtown, I'm walking or I'm biking, and I'm still finding that it is walking a bit of a maze to get from one point to another without having to be too close to other pedestrians, because there isn't sort of a simple straight line with a wide enough path to follow between any 2 points. So I think taking a look at the original plan, which really had put those safety issues front and center, I'd really encourage the council to return to that and give that another consideration, so that we really manage to get through the next period of extension without anybody having some, oh, this caused an infection, or, this caused an accident or something like that. So we get a good long run with this program. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Alec. And thank you for your painting on that one a lot. Next speaker, please.
Next is Rick Hamer, followed by Pamela Miggs, followed by Mallory.
Good evening, Council. My public comment pertains only to the temporary use permit program. Note, almost all that we've heard so far is about the temporary encroachment permit program. The program had good intentions. Those businesses who were truly challenged and needed these permits to survive indoor restrictions are already through the woods. So only 6 temporary use permits are listed in the staff report, and I question which of these TUPs are inquiring to better weatherize outdoor dining and who they could be, and I asked the staff to name them. Eateries, we have the first example of a business pursuing a good faith solution, staying open for customers, operating within COVID guidelines, addressed public and neighborhood concern, and this business already has a permanent conditional use permit, which it applied for about the same time as its temporary use permit. One business has chosen not to open back up until spring 2021. Personal care. One business did use its temporary use permit when it was issued and now has been allowed to open indoors. Fitness. One business did use its TUP when it was issued and is now able to move its operation back into the pavilion and will let its permit expire. One business did use its TUP when it was issued, and since September 15th has resumed operations back indoors, so the business no longer uses its permit. Another local fitness studio has not opened yet since the first ordinance, even with the TUP. That studio should have really had a conditional use permit applied for from the beginning, based on the extent of work being done and the timing of how long it's taking. I suggest the fair thing to do is steer the sole remaining permittee to allow them to convert its temporary use permit to a conditional use permit application now, and not to hassle about the meaning of Section 6 language, which really should be reviewed and wordsmithed over so there's not so much confusion out here in the wild. Interpretation of the ordinance Section 6 subsections D and G is troubling. The town reviews and ensures compliance and waives any code usually required. The subject fitness permittee has claimed that their permit means the town approved and is taking responsibility for any codes. Another permittee recounted to me that the property owner there independently had a similar interpretation too. I personally suspect that the language was more fitting for a temporary encroachment resolution on public property, not private, but that's just my layperson's opinion. I urge the council to simply not support the extension of the TUP program. Please do not adopt this resolution. At the very least, have the existing permittees reapply under the new terms. And I think you can read, you have the ordinance in front of you, but I'll read it here in my remaining moments. Quote, all proposed additional, and here you have examples of temporary uses, will be reviewed by the town to ensure compliance with the requirements above, which are reopening protocols, quote, ABC, fire code, quote, ADA, and public health and safety. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Next speaker, please.
The next speaker is Pamela Miggs, followed by Mallory.
Okay. Well, I first wanted to thank the chamber. I just know how much of a struggle it's been. I grew up, my stepfather had a small business in the East Bay, and I worked in that store all through high school. So I understand the struggle of a small business. So I want to be supportive. I have some issues around safety as well. And I've been hearing some complaints from bicyclists about ballinas and how that parklet, so-called parklet, extends out too far and they're squeezed. And I know what it's like if a big truck comes in and I'm at that stoplight. It's pretty scary. So I don't know if you can pull that back, but then I'm wondering about that whole area, about the sidewalk for strollers, walkers, wheelchairs. Can they actually get through there safely? And then all the congestion on the corner. So, I mean, I was on the planning commission for a long time. I'm just wondering, and I don't want to cause trouble, but maybe that whole Bolinas area could move up near the Hummingbird. That is so lovely, that area. It's just kind of a, promenade, you kind of walk, there's stores, it's a lot open, there's space. So I know this is kind of late in the game, but that's what I notice every time I go down there. And then the horrible story in San Jose where the woman was hit by somebody that accelerated their car accidentally and she died in a parklet. So I just think we need to be really cautious on the flow of traffic, how much traffic is around the parklets. Let's see, and what was I gonna say? And I know some talk is like, well, in San Francisco they do this. Well, this is not San Francisco. And that whole hub in that area, as we know, is just like, it's always buzzing, people moving, and you're dealing with all kinds of people. So I think for me, the biggest thing is safety. And I'd also like to know if you had complaints from the community to the police or to the town about any of these parklet areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Let's go on, yes.
The next speaker is Mallory.
Okay, hi. The first thing I just want to address to somebody asked me to read something, which I'm glad to do, as I have been at other meetings asked to read and speak as a voice for other people who don't want to get up and talk. So Bruce, I just really want you to know that what you said about my little, how did you say it? Little item special to me, I found really disrespectful and diminishing, and I don't appreciate you saying it like that to me, unless you want to talk to me privately, okay? The other thing is, Barbara, I'm a little confused because first you're using, you're saying how in this situation we are, basically Fairfax is a special little town that doesn't do things the way everybody else does. And last issue, you're using that opposite as, well, the other towns don't do this and we shouldn't be doing it. So I think you got to get those things together when you were talking about issues that we talk about in Fairfax that you're not for. And now this one you're for, and now we get to be an exceptional little town. So I want you to really just see that. And I'm going to read the other thing now. There are 6 permit lists listed in the staff report, permittees listed in the staff report. One has a conditional use permit for 50 of the 56 outdoor seats. 4 are indoors and will not need outdoor use going forward, leaving 1 fitness business that has not reopened during the over 12 weeks since its TUP was issued. So far, the exemptions of the TUP have been leveraged for the purpose of redressing its facility for permanent outdoor use, rather than promptly applying for a conditional use permit as they could have. This remodel is not even done and open yet. If the council opts to extend the program before you, which has been reduced, so it really only benefits 1 business who generated 0 customer activity during the term of its TUP so far, the council is in effect granting a pass for this 1 business to skirt the right of the public to conduct a hearing, planning commission review, a proper conditional use permit inspection, and ensure code compliance, all so someone can construct a durable use not natively permitted by our zoning code. This grant of special privilege was already used to newly plant a 35-foot wall of bamboo when all the rest of us in the Ross Valley Fire District, are being directed to abate bamboo hazards. Please do not approve this extension. Do you all know where that is? I can tell you if you don't. School Street. I think we're talking about the School Street Plaza business that's taken over the plaza. And the other thing is, Michelle, I think people didn't get this notice, and I have a feeling if you asked everybody to raise their hand who is actually listening, I don't think you would get a lot of people here today. So I just want you to really make sure that you put out notices to people before meetings, like at least a few days before. Okay, I think that's everything.
Thank you very much.
Done.
Yeah.
Okay.
And might I just add that all of these meetings have been properly noticed by law and by all requirements of us. So it's a whole nother story about whether people see the notices, but it has been properly noticed, I will assure you. Next speaker, please.
The next speaker is Chance Cutrano.
Good evening, Council. This is Chance Cutrano. I was just calling in support of the extension of the temporary use and temporary encroachment permits. It's pretty clear that while we're doing better as a county, moving into the orange tier and increasing indoor capacity, we're not out of the woods yet, as exemplified by a number of other states that are experiencing second waves and closing things back down. And I think this isn't the moment to leave our businesses high and dry. And I did have a couple questions. I was hoping that at some point either Garrett or John Bella would be able to address, which is moving forward with the same permits, a question regarding the visibility of structures, especially during inclement weather, when it's raining at night, or concerns about weatherproofing and what additional structures would be developed. Is there any change to the permits? Would we have to retroactively make any change if we had to go back to this at a later date because people wanted to include new things on their structures to weatherproof them? It was just something that wasn't clear to me in moving forward. The other thing I did want to call in favor of was the 7 days a week at the mono lot. I have been a part of the process of consistently moving tables and chairs and umbrellas, and I agree with the sentiment about that questions the sustainability of using volunteers to do all of that labor. But I also note the considerable wear and tear, specifically on the umbrellas. And I think there would be interesting opportunities to, continue to beautify or make that space more aesthetically pleasing for all residents to use, and better signage for that space if we weren't constantly moving the police barricades and the tables and the umbrellas and these extremely heavy umbrella weights as well. So did want to call in favor of extending all these things given the current uncertainty, but still have questions about what if any changes need to be made to permits if there's going to be considerable construction or change to the different structures that are out on the streets and the parking spaces currently. Thank you.
Thank you, Chance. Are there other speakers?
I do not see any other speakers if you'd like to close the public comment, Madam Mayor.
Yes. So I just saw a hand pop up.
So did I. Mark Bell, I've unmuted you.
Thank you. I think that the comments made about making a reassessment of who's using their permits is a good thing to do. before just blanket approval of going forward. And the thing that does bother me to a degree is people already clamoring for public support of making these permanent on their structure. I don't know, I have a problem with that. I mean, what you're doing right now, or what we're doing right now as a town, is giving people enough commercial, in essence, in quotation marks, commercial space so that they can continue to hopefully survive in the current condition. But when you start talking about, running little write-in campaigns, then I think you're really, what they're trying to get is, are they going to be paying us commercial rate for the square footage that's being used on the street? Someone else brought up the point of, why doesn't Coffee Roastery move their parklet, which I believe is probably the largest, over onto Broadway? And so that would also really help as far as Bolinas being a fire exit in case we do have a catastrophe that's been going on everywhere else in California. So I think that there's more thought that needs to go into this than just a blanket approval of going forward. I'm glad that people are doing, that the businesses are doing better. But when I look at the places, I don't see social distancing. When I walk down Broadway from Bank of America down to Bolinas, basically I'm walking in the street because there's no way to keep 3 feet distance, let alone 6. So I think you really need to reevaluate overall ways to make this work and keep it safe. I'm not saying stop it, but I think you need to reevaluate and really do a little bit more study on the short term. And I would recommend taking down signage of people running their little campaigns. That's it.
Thank you very much, Mark. Are there other speakers, or has everyone spoken?
I do not see any other speakers, Madam Mayor.
Okay, terrific. So let's bring it back to council, and you go for it, you guys. If you have questions of David, if you have ideas for moving forward, please share your thoughts.
Can I make a recommendation that can we stick to one topic? So monolot, and then,
Yeah.
so we're not all over the place.
Yes, good suggestion. I'm looking at what we need to, so that, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, I think that really what has to happen tonight is we have to look at the extension of the TUPs and the TEPs, and talk about the public space in mono-lot. So let's start with talking about mono-lot, because John's here, and we want to get all those questions answered.
Can I ask a point of order? Just a point of order. Although I see the staff report talking about the mono lot, I don't see anything specific about us taking any action on the mono lot
I
in the
know.
recommendation. So I'm not sure that we can do that tonight. And I would ask that, I guess, of our town attorney or our town manager.
So the intent of the item was to give you kind of an update of what we're doing and what we're at. The council, you're right, wouldn't actually take an action, but you could give direction to staff, because staff has authority for certain things, and all we would do is then, if we need to, we'd come back November 4th if we need you to do a resolution to do something. But more importantly, that's kind of you're just providing your comments. Although I would say for tonight, what would make more sense is direction on TEPs, directions on TUPs. And if you have a bunch of questions on mono or thinking something different, then we could schedule that in November to talk about more. Or you could ask me questions about why we did something a certain way. Like or I forget the name of the place, Amelie. Amelie, as a condition of their TEP approval, they actually had to contact the adjacent businesses of which parking spaces were in front of to get their approval to do that. So, you know, that's if you need more questions and things. But again, our main thing is TEPs and TUPs, just your direction on that. Other things we could schedule, you know, in November to talk about more if you wanted to, or there's something you really want to give us direction on, then that's fine.
So Garrett, just sorry, before we go forward. So in Mono Lot, there was a proposal that we keep it open on the Wednesday night, and then there was talk of 7 days. Can we provide direction or ask you to bring that back in November, or can we move forward with some kind of a proposal? Is that okay, given the agenda? I mean, given the item?
You could either, you know, you could either come back in November, or you could just tell me now, because Mono Lot's our own parking lot, so that's easy enough for staff to do. But staff clearly would not do that unless that was what it sounded like a majority of council were okay with doing.
I think I would just say this is that I would suggest, Mayor, that you may want to talk about it, but I don't think people really knew that the discussion of changing the Mono Lot to potentially 7 days was an item for action on the agenda. So I think we should talk about it in November, even though we might want to have some discussion now.
Okay.
I just think that might require a little more feedback.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I thought that was at least to include Wednesday, but I guess it's not. So yes, let's discuss it briefly and then bring it back on November's agenda, please. Okay, so let's talk about the TEPs at this point. And really, I know
I have more commentary on mono. Can we keep it
Oh.
on for a second?
Yes, please.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to say thank you to the chamber and thank you to John. I think it looks beautiful. You remember it was a kernel of an idea and it's great. I do have some more feedback. I think the community needs more communication on what it is. And I would like to see the survey. So if we could commit to that. Somebody asked about if there had been any complaints. We did get a formal complaint from Naves. So Eddie didn't know about it. So I think that speaks to the lack of the formal launch. And I don't know what communication strategy there was, but he didn't know about it and he's 2 doors down. And then as far as bathroom access, Garrett, do we still have the portable next to the, or near
Way station.
Thank you.
It goes away November 1st.
Oh, okay. Okay. And then when we were talking about this concept, we had committed to some signage around, which I think we should have signage saying this is a public space, that John said that like people should know this is a parklet, and that, I mean, are kids allowed to sit there and anybody can sit down? Do you have to have food there? I thought we said that you weren't allowed to bring alcohol there from like the 7-Eleven. Is that right?
Yes, but.
And we said, I remember specifically saying that we would have signage related to that.
Yeah, we do have a banner there that says this is a public space. This is for all Fairfax businesses. We didn't get as far as the alcohol piece. It's very hard to communicate that. But I hear you, and it is one of the many things that we need to continue to pursue, how to message that correctly.
So I feel frankly frustrated when something is committed to and then it's just not followed through on. Like I have to remember to ask. So I can help with that communication because it's something we committed to the community on. So I can help with that communication if you like.
There's always the issue of you can communicate something, but enforcement is another issue. So
put three signs there. One that says this is a public space. It's not limited to any specific business. Public space for all. One is that no alcohol is allowed in this public space, period.
From outside.
Well, what is the public space? It's all from outside. It doesn't belong to Gestalt House, so there would be no alcohol allowed there. It would be coffee. And then the other one would be that a restroom is at Town Hall at 142 Bolinas Road.
Okay, Garrett, can you please comment on the alcohol piece?
Okay, if Gestalt House, obviously customers couldn't use it, then he'd have to go back to mono. My understanding from ABC is they can have a license that allows them to use the public space, whatever that license is. If you don't have that type of license, then technically you wouldn't be allowed to use that space. I actually thought there are signs that say it's a public space, and I know
there is
about the different signage with the chamber regarding the tables and so on. It gets a little tricky with ABC, but if you have the correct license, then your customers can obviously sit there.
So are you saying, Garrett, let's be clear about this. Are you saying that Gestalt House, customers from Gestalt House can drink alcohol in that public space? Yes or no?
If he has the proper license, yes.
Well, does he or not? I mean, why don't we know the answer to that?
Because it's his ABC license, he says he has it, I'd say, okay. We're not checking that. It's up to the individual business to have the proper licensing.
Okay, well, I would think
License,
that
then that works.
our police are checked with on ABC licenses, so maybe we could verify that. But can we have something about no alcohol allowed from other spaces? Restroom is in Town Hall, 142 Bolinas, and this is a public space. And just get some signs out there. I don't think we need a communication strategy. I just think we need the signs. And for a while, I don't think it was clear where people use a handicap space now that we've closed off the normal one. So do we have the sign for that?
We added a space on Bolinas.
But do we have a sign that makes it clear for those folks who thought, I mean, is there a sign that makes it clear that that is a handicap space? I haven't checked it.
Yes, the ADA space, or which space? The one on Bolinas or the one in the parking
The
lot?
one that we've replaced from the mono lot, is it clear that it's a handicap space?
Yes, we repainted the handicap space.
Okay, well then that's great. So it seems like we just need kind of three signs. Let's get those out there and just make it clear to folks that it's for everyone.
So Barbara, just to repeat real quick that we do have quite a sizable banner that says this is public space. Welcome to Fairfax Plaza. This is for all Fairfax businesses. So
Okay,
that is,
great.
I hear you about the bathroom, and also we have to look into the license, and John Bella has something he's been trying to say for quite some time.
Excellent.
Sorry to interrupt, and I'm not sure what the protocol is to butt in on your discussion, but I just wanted to emphasize a couple things. So earlier in the year, ABC changed their guidelines to allow, at first the guideline was bars could only do takeout alcoholic beverages if they were serving food, but that's actually been changed. They changed the guidelines there several months ago to allow bars to offer takeout beverages because it was just kind of, it's been critical for the survival of those types of entities. So so that's my understanding, and it's sort of how a lot of these spaces are working throughout the Bay Area and across the country now in terms of supporting local businesses, in particular those which serve alcohol. You know, in terms of signage, communication, we got the banners out there. We've got on all the tables it says it's a public space. I just want to bring up the point that Chance brought up again, which is that it's difficult to take this space up a notch in terms of visual communication, in terms of amenity, in terms of invitations for people beside Gestalt House patrons, when we're handicapped by the fact that we have to dismantle the whole thing twice a week. And, you know, if we had the ability to have some planters out there, some greenery, some other types of seating, a small stage, which David suggested, not necessarily for live music, but for other types of programming. It could be, you know, a storytelling. I mean, I know the library is looking for a space to do their programming. They don't have an outdoor space where they could do social distance reading for kids. I mean, this space could be doing so much more for our community if we could make this decision to extend it 7 days a week. And I think that would make it comparable to what San Anselmo has in their little plaza area, you know, with the picnic tables and the wood chips. That's open all the time.
And may I remind, sorry to interrupt, but I will remind everyone that the Creek Park Plaza in San Anselmo has the same exact situation we do. So Creekside is connected to there. People buy their beer, they go and sit in Creekside Plaza. It's a very much the same thing.
So that's really helpful. I think that's a helpful vision, John, and I disagree respectfully. I think that is what is missing here, is a communication strategy to the community. They don't have that vision right now. They think it's an extension. I believe they think it's for drinking people at, I think, you know, they don't see it as a community space for what you're talking about. You know, we didn't launch this thing, and I know that it's just been sort of like, you know, trying to get it up and running, but I think to do it justice and to really see it through in the way that you're talking about, it needs to be communicated in just how you did. And I'm happy to help with that, but I can't support 7 days right now until we help broaden awareness and get that message out there, because you're just right now I don't think you have community support for it. And so I can't get behind 7 days, because right now it looks like, you know, a drinking space. And I agree with you. We need to get, it would be a lot more inviting to have the greenery in there and so forth, but it's not where it needs to be.
Okay, Bruce?
So we, just one comment on this topic, and then I think we'll be getting back to the TEPs and TUPs. And this topic isn't an action item, so we can't really, as we talked about. But as far as the drinking, what I had understood to be the issue that we needed to clarify with signage was to that people should not bring drinks that they get at 7-Eleven or a grocery store, or they bring from home or whatever. The idea is if you're drinking there, it's because you got drinks from one of the town restaurants or bars. Is that correct? Or you don't need to answer, but that's what I had thought was the issue that we were trying to convey with regard to alcohol.
Yes, that is the issue we were trying to convey.
Yeah. Just wanted to clarify that because it hasn't been said yet tonight. Okay, that's it.
Thank you. So, John.
Yeah, as long as we're going to soon be moving off the monolot, I had a couple of thoughts on that. I mean, I think most people perceive it as an extension of Gestalt House, and you know, the majority of people there it's right next door to Gestalt House, and you're not going to change that. And I think by putting up some signs, you're not going to change that a lot. I think Stephanie is very correct in that we have to launch this as a public space in that way. And it's a bit of a chicken and egg problem with the 7-day issue. I mean, there's definite infrastructure there. And, you know, I think it's, you know, Gestalt House says, great, you know, we'll take on the cleanup thing, which I personally think is is it's a stretch to think that volunteers are going to take care of that. I mean, I think Gestalt, yeah, wants to take that on because it's an extension of their business the way it's currently being set up. So that's another different chicken and egg thing. I think having the chamber be the main person that organizes the maintenance of the place does, you know, I mean, it's a lot to put on the chamber, but it would extend that to the other businesses that should be also using that more than Gestalt does. You know, and, you know, whether the chamber wants to take that on is a question. But I think that's, you know, having the mayor out there every day is, you know, that's too much to ask. The mayor's got a lot to do. And I think, you know, but that's what's happening because she feels responsible. You know, so that's a problem. I think with an organized plan for the mono lot, with 7 days as a thing and a rollout, you know, maybe it is a stage that, you know, can be, you know, properly set up so that social distance norms can be okay. That's great. You know, storytelling is great. I don't know that the library would choose that as their premier spot, but it's a problem. You know, but it really needs to be gotten in front of, I think, you know, to have a maintenance plan that works with the 7-day thing. And I'll just restrict my comments right now to the mono lot, just because I think I definitely got a lot more to say on the rest of town, but that's the mono lot part.
Okay. Anyone else quick on mono
And I'll
lot?
say one other thing. At some point, if we do go forward with the mono lot and maybe move it to 7 days and maybe do a more formal launch, I do like the name Manuela Plaza. That's neat. So let's consider that. Not lose it. Okay, that's it.
Okay. Great. So I'm not sure where we are with that, Garrett, but what I would like to see happen is that you would come back it's next week at our November meeting, and we could have a discussion about the 7 days. Obviously, we need a launch. The reality is that given that everything's temporary, given that we're in a season change, given that we're under COVID and the requirements and the restrictions around groups and gatherings and music are changing under our feet daily, it's been very hard to get the kind of launch that you're talking about, Stephanie, out there. Communicating to the community is vital, but I will say that, you know, the amount of grassroots effort to make this happen, given cost, given, you know, the alcohol messaging, every piece is challenging in the realm of temporary. And I know where people's concerns are because I've heard them as well. So if we could look at that just as soon as possible, we have to talk about weatherizing that mono lot if we're going to do it at all, because otherwise this is a moot point and we might as well just open it up to cars until the weather gets good again. Hopefully the weather's going to get bad. But so we do need that discussion sooner than later, Garrett.
So you want to have a discussion next week on the mono lot. There clearly won't be enough time to do any surveys or anything like that. You want to
obviously.
We can, you know, obviously we've in the newsletter said it's open to public spaces. We've done lots of things. And so, but okay. So we'll
it's just that otherwise we're going to go into December and it's really too late for us to do anything in the lot during the remainder of 2020.
So is the council desire you'll actually make a decision maybe next week on what you want to do or a variation thereof?
I would hope that we could, and so that we're not, you know, going to just close up shop till the end of the year, because this won't last the way it is. We don't,
right.
The chamber doesn't have the resources to make this happen without the volunteer effort at this time.
But as the town, we offered to pay the chamber to do that, but then they would have to have whatever, consultant employee or whatever, and that would start to get expensive. So, okay. So the thought pattern is you want to have this discussion to extent possible. Maybe we could throw some numbers in there because the issue of maintenance is a big deal. You need somebody, forget the setting up. You need somebody to clean it in between.
Yeah.
If you're going to run it for 8-10 hours, then you're going to need somebody 8-10 hours every day.
Yeah, Gestalt will do it Tuesday through Sunday. So, but that jumps ahead of things. We need to talk about it as a council at the next meeting. So, John, I think, can you
All right, just real briefly. So I think that the staffing for maintenance is, and actually our ability to communicate better signage, lighting, extending the hours. You can't do any of that if you open it up to cars, and cars are going to be driving through that main entrance, whatever, Monday through Wednesday. It's really difficult to enable other uses besides the alcohol consumption, which is the easiest and sort of easiest thing that we were able to get going without that space having a bit more capability. So I think those things are very much connected regarding, Stephanie, your concern about promoting it, getting it out there, offering other types of programming. The space has to have the capability to support those types of activities in order for this to realize its full potential, I guess I would say. And so, yeah, I'll close there. And I'm going to have to bounce off. But
thank you, John.
Here tonight. If you have any other questions for me, send me a note. Happy to try to answer anything I can about the other parts of things. And thank you all again for all your effort in making Fairfax a beautiful, livable community. Ciao.
Thank you.
Bye, John. Thanks a lot.
John, lots of, yeah, it's been very good. And I think my comment on the chicken and egg thing is very clearly speaking to what John was saying.
Okay. So let's talk about the TEPs and the TUPs. Starting.
That we depart. You need
Say that again?
Do you need the chamber anymore?
No, we don't. Unless you want. No, we're all good. Thank you, guys.
Hi, Dad.
Appreciate seeing your faces.
I know you guys are having a lot of fun with this, but.
Thank you.
See you in the morning, David.
All right, guys, I'll see you in the morning.
Thank you.
Bye, Kaz. Thank you. All righty. So we're faced with talking about the extension of these permits. Through May 31st, the TEPs may be extended by resolution, and the TUPs need to have this ordinance approved in order to be extended. So let's start with TEPs. Any thoughts about TEPs, Barbara?
Can I just do both of them together?
Sure,
That's
please.
possible, because I think they
Yes.
do sort of go hand in hand. So I think Rick Hamer mentioned something regarding the TUPs that it would be worthwhile to have people potentially reapply, because as I look at that list, at least the lodge has a CUP, so they're not going to need it. So I think it's worthwhile, even if we don't have a formal reapplication, to check and see if people still want them as far as the TUPs. But I also think as far as the TEPs, the same logic may apply. Some of those folks may not want the TEPs any longer that have them. For example, I'm not sure about Yoga Mountain. I mean, I don't know this. I'm just saying I'm not sure that all of them, like Fairfax Barbershop, is now going to be able to open more broadly to 50% capacity, or are they still going to want them? So I think we should check on that. I'm supportive of extending, but with a check-in to make sure that people want to extend them, and maybe it's just a one-pager that they sign that they still want to extend it. And then the other piece I would like to add, which I think applies to both of them, is in theory, we moved the loading zone to Broadway from Bolinas Avenue, And what I've seen reminds me a lot of San Francisco or New York City, with a lot of double parking at what was the old loading zone, which is causing a hazard. So I don't think there's good signage there. And I think this is something the chamber and maybe we need to do to get the information out that if it's coffee roastery or somebody else who's got folks delivering and they're double parking in that loading zone, they need to tell them to move. But we need to get some signage out. So I'm totally supportive of extending through May 31st with the caveat about the check-in. I would also say that there's some folks, for example, on the corner of Bolinas and Broadway that have 2 tables in the road there that already have a street extension or a parklet, as some of us call it. And I don't think that was part of their approved TEP, and I think that's creating a hazard. So I think we need to do a little better job of kind of policing. I don't think that's the right terminology, but making sure that what people agreed to in their TEPs, that they're following that. And the last piece that I don't think we can really get to at this point is something that John Bella suggested, is that potentially we have some kind of guidelines for retail accessibility and use of these parklets or street extensions, as John calls them, for more than just paying customers. Potentially they're public spaces, because we're helping the businesses stay alive, but we're also enlivening our downtown. And maybe that's not the right time during COVID to do that. But those are my comments on both of them. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara. Next. Who would like? Bruce?
I'll just make one quick point that I haven't heard mentioned yet, which follows on, I believe it was Chance's comment, that as the winter comes and it gets darker, more hours, and sometimes visibility is not so great, it would really be a great idea, and I don't know how we do this, we don't, but just to say, it would really be great if the structures that were used for the TEPs had reflectors on the corners of them or something, so that it was more visible as you came around a corner, like was talked about, from Broadway onto Bolinas, you would know that that was there. Keeping in mind, not everybody has seen this during the daytime. They might be coming into town for the first time in a while at night in the rain, and we need it to be visible. That's it.
Thank you. Do you want to just say if you are in support of the extensions so that we don't go around?
Well, I support extending them, and as the staff report says, that requires us passing this ordinance that allows us to extend the TUPs by resolution. So I support that whole process and extending right now until May 31st. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next. John?
Sure. Well, just to get that out of the way, I also support the extensions, but I think there are a couple of small reflectors that have been attached to these, some of these, but I think the small reflectors are not enough. I mean, I've seen the red reflective tape could be, more area, going right down that area on the corner of the parklet is a good idea. There's a couple of small screw-on reflectors, but I don't frankly think that that's enough. I think they need to be much more visible. A lot of the stuff that John Bella brought up in terms of the needs for retailers and pedestrian access, I think is really important and needs to be addressed. I mean, I agree that these parklets are a lifesaver for our downtown eateries and areas that, can use them. I think their exclusive use of certain areas is a problem. You know, they do need to have public access. But I think that the pedestrian access has been restricted in certain areas, and that needs to be looked at. You know, we need to maybe modify some things for that, and also look to talk to our retail businesses. And with the coming change in the weather, hopefully it's going to change and we're going to get some relief from this fire weather. But that's going to change a lot of things downtown too. And this is always been seen as a temporary situation, and we've got to kind of roll with the punches and adapt as we go. And as we go, I think taking retail's needs and, you know, the giving the businesses assurance that they're going to continue to have this temporary encroachment permits there so that they can invest in weatherization to keep their businesses alive is important. So we need to say yes to this extension, but we also need to say it's a moving situation, and we need to accommodate all of our downtown businesses and not just a few, so that it works for everybody. You know, I've heard complaints that, you know, all of the seating is being taken by that. There's nothing left for the scoop, for instance. And also there's nothing left for retail businesses to put a rack out in front. We need to make ourselves flexible enough so that it works for all of our businesses and pedestrians downtown. So that's
okay. Thank you, John. Stephanie?
Yeah, I just have a couple of quick questions. And thank you for the reflector idea. I like that. Barbara, what was your suggestion on the check-in? So are you saying before we just, if we approve these or vote yes on these, that we do, rather than automatically extend them, we check in with all of these businesses first, like do a phone call? Because I know, for example, Yoga Mountain is no longer in business.
Right. So what I would suggest is we have a half a page. I'm sorry, what?
Garrett's trying to talk.
Oh, okay. Garrett's trying to talk?
Yeah, I think, Garrett, do you want to
say? See that.
Yeah, just so you know, staff's in agreement. I mean, normally how this would work is we would reach out to everybody, see if they need an extension, are there any changes. For TUPs, it should be pointed out that if anyone was going to do a tent and they needed a building permit or so on, that would have to be approved, so they would have to do that. So as a matter of course, we would reach out to everybody and ask them. And it is true, some places wouldn't need them because they're not using the ball field anymore and they're not using the women's club. So that's all very true. We probably should have made that more clear to staff.
Okay, and I shouldn't speak for Yoga Mountain. Maybe they're still doing business as, but not using the retail space, and maybe she would want to use the ball field. So I shouldn't speak for that business owner. Anyway, I just have a question about two questions about timing. So is there a liability issue gap with, like, is there like a 24-hour period where there's no coverage?
Well, we would still have coverage if we're talking about the TUP.
Yeah.
Through between November 30th and 30 days from November 4th. That's roughly what? How many days are in November? So it would be like December 4th. So yeah, so there'd be like 4 days where the TUP, technically, they'd be in violation. It doesn't mean that all their stuff wouldn't be active. It would just mean technically someone can complain and ask for a code enforcement. But by the time we did code enforcement, the ordinance would be active, so it'd be a moot point.
Oh, I thought it would be as of the day we voted it in, which is November.
The TUPs, that's an ordinance, that's 30 days after the second reading. So 30 days from November 4th, TEPs would take effect right away. That's true.
So what is the gap?
The gap for TUPs is in essence 4 days. And there's no way around that.
Okay. And that doesn't put the town at any liability? That doesn't?
No, their insurance and everything would still be active. It would just be, it'd be the equivalent of somebody doing something on their property that was a code enforcement issue. So by the time you took the code enforcement action, the issue would be a moot point because their TUP then would be approved.
Okay. And Janet, you concur with that?
I do, yes.
Okay. Okay, I think I'm good then.
Stephanie, do you go along with the extensions?
Yes, I do.
Okay. I have a couple of comments. One, Garrett, we really need to be clear with the businesses because I do know those that both TEPs and TUPs is there are businesses that are looking very, very carefully into tents right now, and tents are selling out all over the country. So we need to let them know that they would need a permit so that we don't have people just popping up tents all over the place, and letting them know what some of the requirements would be in terms of reflective material, in terms of, you know, ways to make them safe, because with the dark and the gray, it's going to be important.
Sure. Now, a variable to that is, you know, environmental health for the restaurants. They're the ones that govern that for the outdoor spaces. You still have your shelter in place order. And so those structures in the improvements in the parking space, it gets tricky because you can have a cover, but you technically can only have so many walls, and the walls have to be vented. So it gets to be very tricky on what environmental health will allow and what county health order will allow. So that's a work in progress, and that literally affects all of Marin County. And so everyone's going to try to figure that out.
Okay. Yeah, I figured. I also concur that a couple of the places on both of the turns off of Bolinas onto Broadway on the corners really need to be addressed in terms of widening those turns. We've talked about it a lot. I think one is the table that Barbara's referring to. The other is that when we put tents up, we're going to restrict our visibility on those turns even more. And I would really appreciate if we looked back at John Bella's design and looked at that right turn when you go from Bolinas to Broadway, where Fratellizio's curbside pickup is right now. It's really important. And the other one, right turn off of Broadway onto Bolinas. Yes?
So we are planning to address that this week with delineators around different spots. We already talked to a traffic engineer.
Right.
You know, it's on me. I gotta tell a couple of those businesses how it's gonna work.
Okay.
Regarding to the tables for the coffee roastery, it's not like we haven't told them to get rid of it before. So we'll just have to do that again. But you just need to know with all the businesses, it's a very much a work in progress for everything that we do because they're trying to survive. So they'll put signs there. So when in the slides, it showed that the pizza place had a sign that says reserved for the pizza place. Well, that was a new one on us. So that's going to happen.
Okay.
It's corrected and it'll happen again. But yes, we understand it's getting darker. We understand we need to get these delineators up. We'll put them around everywhere. We'll have the curves around there more. But be prepared for a little pushback from a few of the businesses that don't like what I'm going to tell them.
Okay, and the delineators are reflective?
Right, they're the white delineators that we put up, and ones that are
Like it's just like white things that stand up like this. Okay.
Right. It's like the ones around the bike rack.
Are they reflective?
Yes, they have reflectors on top. And
oh, right. Okay, good. I want to talk about the delivery zone. There was that sign that you asked Roastery to put up, but it's now covered by one of the planters. And I think, as Barbara, referred to, we have people double parking. It would be great to have some enforcement out there when people are double parking, and some really clear signage about where that loading zone is. There's no signage up on Bank for the public to know. That is a very normal way to do deliveries on a wide street like we have at Bank Street. They park in the center. That's what Sonoma does. And those deliveries come down the hill from there.
Right.
So we need to mark it.
So we have a slight tweak to that based on the traffic engineer. And so what happens is we'll have to temporarily mark a loading zone on the what side is Bronco and Navi's that side? That's the west side street. So how it work is we will on the pavement call it in essence a loading zone. So truck would be off to the side. We try to create something in the middle like they do in other places. And trucks may do that, but I think the issue is from a safety standpoint for the vehicles to market like that created some issues, but if we push it off to the side, it doesn't. From a traffic engineer point of view. Trucks may still park in the middle, which they do, but technically it'd be off to the side.
Which you're talking about on Bank,
yes,
correct?
on Bank Street, correct. Yeah, so it'll be on Bank, there'll be paint on the ground. I have no idea how people are gonna react to any of this. But yes, so we have plans to do all that, we just haven't. But I get the importance, and we'll be letting the businesses know.
Okay, and then the ADA spot, I know we put the one on Bolinas, but the one on Bank is not in. That would have been the temporary spot while the lot is closed and our van accessible place is blocked.
Right, so that one is, again, it's working with staff to get them out there to do that every Thursday and then take it away every Monday. And so those are things that we're working through. And I get it. It's just some things just take a little longer than others. But we understand completely all the comments related to this. I just want to let you know it is in what we need to do that before it gets dark.
I think there's one more piece is I think that there are some businesses that are encroaching on space, or they should have TEPs and or TUPs. And if we could remind people that are doing that these permits are free and they need to get them, that would be excellent.
Okay, one other quick thing, and I wanted to just add about the mono lot, and for many of the reasons that have already been discussed. A vision I had was that perhaps that mono lot, if we were to decide to allow it to be open for 7 days, and that would allow flexibility. I'm not even sure that we'll know at that point what it could be used for, but one idea was a artisan's bazaar. It's the only sizable space that we have for bringing any kind of outdoor shopping for the holidays. And we have many artists in town who are really struggling. I've mentioned it to one of the local artists on Park and Rec, and she might be interested. And there's a lot of interest in someone could manage it. And that's something we can talk about at the next meeting, but I wanted to just put that out there as an idea that 7 days would allow flexibility that may not even have to be related to Gestalt. So like John said, we have very few community spaces that are usable for our businesses in our community. So I just wanted to put that out there, and my vote is that we do extend these permits with all of the quantifying things that all of you brought to it, and thank you all for rolling with the punches and going with the flow as this evolves. So with that, you need a motion for the
For a special meeting item.
Or just for the special meeting item?
Special meeting item, just if someone could make a motion and just read recommendation 1 and 2, that would be perfect. And TEPs, we have enough direction to bring that back to you in November for approval.
I could do that.
All right.
So I make a motion to introduce and read by title only an ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Fairfax authorizing the town manager to issue temporary outdoor use permits to allow restaurants and other businesses to provide outdoor dining and curbside pickup, and waiving any applicant fees in the town's review process, and authorizing the expiration date of such permits to be set by resolution. Could I make a friendly amendment to that, which would also include is that restaurants and other businesses to provide outdoor dining, retail uses, and curbside pickup, and waiving any such applicant fees in the town's review process, and authorizing the expiration date of such permits to be set by resolution.
Okay. Is there a
Garrett, did you get that friendly amendment?
I actually didn't get a chance to write it down.
And I don't know if we need to amend the actual ordinance, because I think we do.
Yes.
Because we're talking about, so it would be an amendment which would say to issue temporary outdoor use permits to allow restaurants and other businesses to provide outdoor dining, comma, and other retail uses, comma, and curbside pickup, and waiving such applicant fees in the town's review process, and authorizing the expiration date of such permits to be set by resolution, which would mean we would change the title of the ordinance. And I'm not sure if there's other places in the ordinance that need to be changed. Would somebody care to enlighten us as to that?
Yeah, I'm looking for it.
Okay, so maybe we could have a second with that amendment.
Why don't you say, and the necessary amendments to the code?
Okay,
I'll second that with.
Okay, I was going to just add them to the motion, and adding any necessary amendments to the actual code language.
Yeah.
To affect that change. Yeah.
I actually think we could do that. I think it's fine because qualifying business includes retail businesses and a whole slew of things, which is.
But it's not clear from the title that you're doing that.
Sure. I think that's fine in the title. I don't know if we need to change anywhere else in the ordinance, but okay, that's fine. I was just letting you know.
Okay, thank you.
I would
So adding any necessary amendments to affect that change.
Okay.
I would second that motion with the friendly amendments and any necessary changes.
Except I think that Bruce already seconded it.
Yeah,
But
Bruce already seconded.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
okay, so we have a motion Kohler and a second Ackerman. Councilmember Hellman,
Aye.
Councilmember Reed,
Aye.
Councilmember Kohler,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Ackerman.
Aye.
Okay, and myself, I vote aye, and I thank everyone for your time and for a great
We need
meeting.
another motion.
We need another motion.
So I make a motion
Sorry.
to establish an expiration date of May 31st, 2021, but schedule the consideration of the resolution to be concurrent with the adoption of the ordinance. And that is for temporary encroachment permits.
Actually, that's for the temporary use permit.
Oh, I'm sorry. So establish an expiration date of May 31st, 2021, but schedule the consideration of the resolution to be concurrent with the adoption of the ordinance.
Okay, so that's motion Kohler. Who would like to?
I'll second that too.
Okay, second Ackerman. So Councilmember Hellman,
Aye.
Councilmember Reed,
Aye.
Councilmember Kohler,
Aye.
And Vice Mayor Ackerman.
Aye.
And I vote aye. And again, I'll thank everyone for participating, and thank you to staff. And we will see you all next Wednesday, which is November the 4th at 7 p.m. And everyone stay safe, be well, and see you later.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.